for question and answers or comments at the end of the event. So I would like to thank you for coming. The Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning has arrived along with the Chief of Defense Staff and the Service Chiefs, as well as other critical stakeholders who are here for this very special event. We want to thank you all for coming. The Chairman of the Governors Forum, Excellency Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, has just walked into the room. In these difficult times where we don't get to see each other often, we miss each other. So when we see each other, it's really a time to say hello and be warm and friendly, you know. Please keep the aisles free. I'd like to invite media now to play the national anthem, a salute to the nation. Please be seated. Your Excellency, the former British Prime Minister, Mr. James Gordon Brown, Fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. He's also UN Special Envoy on Education, who will be joining us by links with technology now. We are having him in the room join us. The Chairman Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Your Excellency, it's good to see you. The executive governors here present, we are aware that several of them are making their way into the room, and representatives of the governors here present. Members of the National Assembly, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Dr. Zainab Ahmed, our chief host, the Honorable Minister of Education, Malam Adamu Adamu, National Security Advisor, General Babagana Monguno, the Special Advisor to the President on Social Investment, Hajia Mariam Weiss, the Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Loki Rabon, the Chief of Army Staff, Major General Ibrahim Atahiru, the Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Awal Beru, and the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Vice Marshal Shaka Oladayo Am, and the Acting Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, Permanent Secretary Finance, Permanent Secretary Special Duties in the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, heads of government and extra ministerial departments, chairman, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, captains of industry, heads of international organizations here present, executive director of various organizations here, the UNICEF country director, the World Bank representative, members of the diplomatic corps, the United States ambassador to Nigeria, the Norwegian ambassador to Nigeria, the Egyptian ambassador to Nigeria, and the United Kingdom High Commissioner to Nigeria, chairpersons and panelists for today's discussion, my lords, spiritual and temporal, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful day in Abuja today, and I would like to welcome you to this excellent initiative, Financing Safe Schools, Creating Safe Learning Communities, organized by the Federal Ministry of Finance with the participation of major stakeholders, including the Federal Ministry of Education and leaders of Nigeria's security architecture. It is a well thought out and timely event. As a parent myself, I understand what it is like at such a time like this to send a child out to school with some hesitancy. Kudos to the Federal Ministry of Finance and its leadership for this timely and appropriate intervention. It goes without saying that the world is going through a health crisis, and the pandemic has deepened socioeconomic challenges around the world. Statistics of out-of-school children is mind-boggling, and this has impacted every sphere of our lives, increasing poverty quotient and creating ill-equipped youth who cannot face the future or engage productively. In the Northeast, where conflict looms large as a result of insurgency, only 20% of children who complete primary school can read. Uneducated children are often more vulnerable to exploitation. There is no better time to mitigate and intervene and engage than now. We thank you all for coming to join in redoubling efforts to achieve a safe school environment for our children, while exploring a multidimensional approach to ensuring that Nigeria is at the forefront of meeting the Sustainable Development Goals through safe learning communities. The Ministry of Finance is determined through multi-sectoral dialogue to include private sector, state governors, National Economic Council, Ministry of Education, the Parliament, multilateral organizations, donors, and civil society to address urgent issues of safety for our children. Thinkers, doers, enablers, thank you for thinking Nigeria and taking action. My name is Eugenia Abu, broadcaster, writer, multimedia strategy expert, and I shall be your guide this morning. It's time now to invite the Permanent Secretary of Finance in the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning to deliver a welcome remark. Mr. Aliyu Ahmed. Please encourage him as he makes it to the podium. Thank you.
Our chief hosts, Mrs. Dr. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, His Excellency, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State and Chair, Nigeria Governors Forum, Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Talen, Permanent Secretaries here present, Service Chiefs, members of Diplomatic Corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I will hang my protocol on the well laid out protocol by our ageless Eugenia Abu. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Federal Ministry of Finance, and the entire staff of the ministry, let me welcome you all to this dialogue on financing safe schools in Nigeria, which is aimed at creating safer learning environment for the children of this great nation. You will agree with me that education is a beautiful thing and is known to be the passport to the future and cornerstone of nation building. A famous writer, I believe it was Victor Hugo, who said that he who opens a school door closes a prison. Without years of schooling, perhaps none of us here present today would be where we are. So any threat to schooling must be taken as a threat to the very existence of any nation. Let me point out that Nigeria's education system is facing challenges, partly as a result of historical financing gap in the sector. Given the fast-growing and youthful population, as almost 44% of Nigeria's population is between the ages of 0 and 14 years. This challenge is exacerbated by conflicts over the years, particularly in the northeast of our country, resulting in the destruction of several schools. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has also made matters worse by increasing learning poverty in the country by about 10%, according to a recent World Bank estimates. A good number of numbers have been issued out there that of Nigerian children out of school. Some say 13 million, others 10 million, but whatever the number is, it is the highest rate of out-of-school children in the world. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, the Federal Ministry of Finance was heavily involved in the creation of Safe School Initiative, following one of the darkest events in our nation's history that sent shockwaves across the entire globe. That is the kidnapping of over 200 school girls from government girls' secondary school dormitories in Chibok, Borno State, on the night of April 2014. To take us down memory lane, the federal government of Nigeria, in collaboration with UN Special Envoy for Global Education, His Excellency the Right Honorable Gordon Brown, a former UK Prime Minister, announced the Safe School Initiative on May 7, 2014, during the World Economic Forum for Africa in Abuja. The objective of the Safe School Initiative is to urgently protect hundreds of schools across the country, starting with schools in the northeastern Nigeria from future attacks and kidnapping. This announcement was followed by the inauguration of a steering committee in July 2014, co-chaired by the former coordinating Minister for the Economy and Minister of Finance, Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and Right Honorable Gordon Brown. And this included the executive governors of Adamawa State, Borno, and Yobe State, as well as representatives of the donor community, the security services, and the private sector. In October 2016, the Safe School Initiative was subsumed by the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, which was also subsequently subsumed into the Northeast Development Commission. At design, the Safe School Initiative focused on 3 work streams. The first entails the transfer of school children from high security risk areas in the worst affected states to school in safer parts of the country. This program transferred about 2,400 IDP students, 800 from each state in Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe to 43 federal unity colleges across the northern parts of the country on full scholarship. The second work stream focused on schools rehabilitation program, which involves upgrading schools infrastructure, physical protection such as proper fencing, installation of alarm system, school guards, community-based policing, and developing school security plans and rapid response systems. The third work streams, implemented through UNICEF, is the innovative education strategies for communities and camps, resolving internally displaced persons. This includes the provision of innovative teaching and learning materials in IDP camps and in host communities. At this juncture, let me express our profound gratitude to the Right Honorable Gordon Brown, who, following the incident, swiftly swung into action, initiated discussion on safer schools, and mobilized support internationally through the UN system. Many may not know that Mr. Gordon Brown personally visited Nigeria and Borno State on a couple of occasions to express his support, and for this we remain very grateful. Let me also express our gratitude to several governments, including those of the UK, Norway, and Germany, to mention a few, and several international organizations like UNICEF and the World Bank, who have supported the Safe School initiative since the inception and made some of its achievements possible. These efforts are a good starting point as we are now witnessing a resurgence in the abduction of school children, as we recently witnessed in Government Secondary School Ankara, Government Science College Kagara, Government Girls Secondary School Jangebe in Katsina, Niger, and Zamfara State, respectively. And this is not acceptable. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we need to urgently address this challenge of insecurity. It is every parent's nightmare that your child goes to school and does not return. To find that a son or daughter has been kidnapped and abducted from the safety of their classrooms and taken far away from you is rather traumatizing. Schools must never be instruments of terror campaigns. Children and teachers must be again free to go to school unharmed and unafraid. As we deliberate today, we have to think outside the box and be innovative in our approach to facilitate sustained safe schools and safe education, given the funding constraint we currently face. I want to encourage all stakeholders, both in the public and private space, to work together for a long-lasting solution to this scourge of insecurity in our schools. Once again, I welcome you all to this dialogue, and I look forward to our engagement on this important national issue. Thank you all for listening.
Would like to thank the Permanent Secretary of Finance in the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning for setting the tone for us. We thank you so very much indeed. As we began to see some of our important dignitaries walk through the door, and I would like to quickly greet and welcome His Excellency, the Governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, who has joined us this morning. Thank you for coming. And we have in our midst the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Talon. She's in the house. Welcome. And join me in welcoming the Honorable Minister of State, Education, Honorable Chukwuemeka Nwajuba. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. At this point, I would like to call on someone who has been working assiduously in the background and in the forefront of ensuring that Nigerian children are in schools. It's a passion. For opening statements, let me invite her to come forward. She would be introducing other persons who would be speaking at the opening statement corner. Before we do that, if you will pardon me, I'd like to make a quick apology to the Chief of Naval Staff, whose designation I got wrong. I apologize. In the military, if you get designations wrong, they put you away. So I'd like to apologize to Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo. Please raise your hand, sir. Let them see that you have accepted the apology. It's good to see you. Welcome. Thank you so very much for coming to join us at this very important event. It's time now to invite Dr. Ayoade Olatunbosun Alakija, Director, Emergency Coordination Center and Co-Chair, African Union Africa Vaccine Delivery Alliance. We'd like to ask her to come and make her opening statements. Dr. Alakija.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, Service Chiefs, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I stand on existing protocol. It is an absolute honor to be here today to speak to you all, but I don't really know why I'm speaking, because the Honorable Permanent Secretary of Finance has really said it all. It is every parent's nightmare for their children to go to school and not come back home. So why are we here? What are we doing here? Why do we have such a distinguished group of people? We've convened this forum because we have an urgent security problem in Nigeria regarding our children, and I'm grateful for the security chiefs for being here today. There's a fierce urgency of now. It is a federal problem, it is a state problem, it is a community problem, it is your problem, it is my problem, and it must be addressed for the security, safety, and education of our children, but also for the security, safety, and economic future of Nigeria. So that is why we're discussing today financing safe schools. It is not just an initiative. It is not just a meeting. It is not just a statement piece today. As you sit in this room, we hope that you're seeing that there's a story around you. As I look directly at the Honourable Minister of Finance, Budget and Planning, and I look over her head, there's a photograph that I personally took in April of 2016 when I made, I think, my third visit to Maiduguri in Borno State. Next to it is a photo that I took in May 2016 when I visited the road to Dikwa. You can see the children's eyes around this room. If you look to my right and to some of you to the left, you see the lovely girls whose eyes are compelling. You see the security officers who are helping keep that school safe. Behind me, these children are crying out for an education. They're crying out for a future. And to the left, my absolute favorite, the beautiful girl, and the school bus. The school bus that will convey her to her future. I can stand here and I can give you statistics and tell you that, for the 1.3 or so million children in the last academic year alone that have had to stop their education because of insecurity, I can tell you that the concomitant loss in earnings for Nigeria in the future is calculated in about $3.4 billion. I can give you the statistics of over 12 million teachers who have been displaced, of over 11,000 children who have been kidnapped. I can give you all those statistics, but statistics really don't matter. You can read those in a book. I'm here to tell you, as a mother, I'm not specifically in the academics, in the education sector, but as a mother and someone who's passionate about education, as somebody whose grandmother was a trader, who sent her first son to go and be a house help in somebody's house in Ibadan, from faraway villages in Ekiti and Akure, from St. David's School, who left his home and his mother and went to get an education and a future. I stand here because of education. I stand here because it was safe for me to go to school. I stand here because he got a scholarship to Government College Ibadan and then went on to the University of Ibadan. I stand here because as his only child and as a girl child, he fought that I would have the very best education possible. And that is what we're here today to discuss. We're here today to plead and to ask all of our partners to bring hands together, to say, let us secure our country, let us secure our schools, let us work in communities, let us work in the education sector, let us work with the private sector, let us work at state level, and let us work at federal level, because our children are our future. Thank you. It is now my incredible privilege to introduce the Honourable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to come and give her opening address, Dr. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed. Please give her a hearty hand of applause as she heads towards us. She's also your host and convener today, and also a mother who does this for our children.
A mother and a grandmother of 11. Very important. Morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, please permit me to stand on the very well-established protocols by my sister, Eugenia. It is an honor and a privilege for me to be here today. Not necessarily a happy occasion, but something that I felt compelled to start. And I must thank Mr. Gordon Brown for reaching out to me. Sometime in January, we had a meeting and a second one because he was concerned, as we were, about the abductions in our schools. And he reminded us that the Safe School initiative that was started in 2014 needs to be upscaled, that it needs to be a process that is integrated and institutionalized within the whole of our communities. I welcome you all to this high-level dialogue on Finance and Safe Schools initiative, creating safe learning communities. Today's program is aimed at initiating a process towards renewing and reimaging our commitment to maintain safe learning environments, secure learning environments, and to protect the dignity of our children, their teachers, and the school administrators. The COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic crisis has posed unprecedented challenges globally and here in Nigeria. While we have been proactive in our approach to the pandemic and have established and are implementing the economic sustainability plan and other interventions, including the scaling up of the social investment programs and increasing investments in health and in education, the pandemic has deepened insecurity across the country and resulted in an alarming spate of school attacks and mass abductions. These actions are a direct attack on our children's fundamental human rights to an education without fear of violence or attack. As described in the Safe Schools Declaration, to which Nigeria is a signatory. In fact, we are among the first 37 United Nations member states to endorse the declaration. Today's dialogue recognizes the need for decisive action and for a coordinated approach to the financing and implementation of an integrated Safe Schools program across the country, which is government-led and is tailored to current realities on the ground. Our citizens are looking at us to lead the way, and we must heed the call to action, and we must all work together to realize the promise of safe school environments. A bit of history. In 2014, following the abduction of the over 200 girls by Boko Haram from a secondary school in Chibok, the Nigerian government, alongside the UN Special Envoy for Global Education, Mr. Gordon Brown, and several development partners and private stakeholders, launched the Safe Schools Initiative. The Safe School Initiative was initially implemented in Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe states. And generally, the aim was to facilitate the transfer of students from high-risk areas to safer schools. Also to provide education in IDP camps and other affected communities. It was also to ensure the stabilization of school security infrastructure while also implementing the community-driven security processes. Additionally, a National Safe Schools Fund was established in 2015 to aggregate funding from the federal government, from the private sector, from donor communities. This funding was used to implement the SSI, the limited version of the Safe Schools Initiative. But the current reality is that while much progress has been made through the SSI and other programs, which many of you that are here today, especially our development partners, have supported, we still have a very long way to go. There is a need to reimage, institutionalize, and scale up our safe school programs, even before the pandemic. The pandemic only came and worsened things. Nigeria today accounts for about 20% of the global out-of-school children. With an estimated 13 million school children, that are currently out of school, we sit at a precipice of a social economic disaster. A full education crisis is at hand, and if we do not act in a manner that is coordinated to stop the current wave of systematic attacks on the fundamental rights of our children to be safe and to learn in a safe environment, we will all have a lot to regret for in the future. As parents, we're increasingly more nervous about sending our children to school, and particularly young girls. Some parents, unfortunately, have started withdrawing their children from school. So the time to act is now. It goes without saying that financing is critical to the successful implementation of many proposed interventions that come out of today's dialogue. We in government recognize that to make the critical investments necessary to sustainably secure our schools and ensure a holistic and community-centered approach to schools programs, we must address the long-standing challenge of domestic revenue mobilization. This process is already ongoing through the implementation of fiscal reforms, including the Finance Acts of 2019 and 2020. Furthermore, we're working to develop the second phase of our strategic revenue growth initiatives, a multi-agency program originally launched in 2019 with prioritized initiatives that cuts across three thematic areas of: 1, achieving sustainability in revenue generation; 2, identifying new and enhancing the enforcement of existing revenue streams; and 3, achieving cohesion in the revenue ecosystem of our people and our tools. As part of these initiatives, we are also exploring how to make our revenue administration processes more efficient, recognizing resource constraints, particularly post-COVID-19. Even with the aforementioned efforts, our fiscal space remains very constrained with the COVID-19 responses that we have had to take and that resulted in increased borrowing by our country. And this is the same as other countries in the world. It is therefore imperative that we work together collaboratively across government and with the private sector and international development partners to develop funding strategies to drive the creation of Safe Schools initiative. We need to look out for funding sources. The federal government, the state governments, and local governments each need to plan and budget for securing our schools. We need to reach out to the private sector to support the plans of government. One of the outcomes that we hope to achieve today is a commitment to develop a national plan, a truly national plan, that will be a plan that is made by the states and the local governments, aggregated by the national government. We will cost those plans and mobilize resources for implementing those plans. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I stated in the beginning of my remarks, today is an opportunity for us to come together to renew, re-image our country's commitment to ensure safe learning environments for our children. This process must be government-led, it must be strategic, and it must be result-oriented. And it must work within a multi-stakeholder framework because everybody has an input to make in this, including the children themselves, the parents of the children, the school-based management committee, the committees, the community leaders, the security agencies, the local government education authorities, the state government education authorities, the Federal Ministry of Education, several ministries, departments, and agencies who must consciously plan, provide for resources within our budget, mobilize resources to make sure that our schools are safe. This process that we're starting today will result in a plan that we will now use as a document to mobilize resources. And I do hope that everybody that is here today will be willing to make inputs into this planning process, because we have to look at the security angle. We have to look at the quality of the education. We have to look at the safety of the children in the school and on their way to the schools. And we have to look at a process to convince parents that they must not withdraw their children from school, that the education of our children is an investment that we must make because it's an investment in the economy and it is the right investment to make. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
The Honorable Minister of Finance has described what needs to be done: government-led, strategic, result-oriented, multi-stakeholder environment. It is up to every single one of us as individual Nigerians and citizens to bring it to ensure that our children are safe. I'd like at this point to, before I invite Dr. Alakija to introduce the next personality to speak, to make a quick introduction and welcome to His Excellency, the Governor of Sokoto State, Right Honorable Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. Your Excellency, it's good to see you. Welcome. I'd like to greet and welcome the UNDP Country Director, Muhammad Yahya, who is amongst us this morning, and representing the Honorable Minister of the Interior, Beni Rauf Arigbeshola, is A. Ahmad Abubakar Audi, MNI, the Commandant General, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. Where are you, sir? Thank you for coming, and I'd like to greet and welcome Chairman, This Day Newspapers, Arise News, Arise TV, Chief Unduka Opaigbena. Thank you for coming. When I first met the woman who is coming back to the podium, I thought she was very unique. She was embedded and ensconced in the Northeast with children, the love of her life, and she showed her passion for the military. She showed her passion for those serving Nigeria, a true Nigerian, Dr. Alakija.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege, a passionate Nigerian, but also a very proud daughter of Ekiti State. So my grandfather, the king, Ologotun of Ogotun. So for me today, it is just beyond an honor and a privilege to welcome who I call the Excellency of Excellencies, the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Governor of Ekiti State, John Kayode Fayemi, Your Excellency.
Okay. Well, I've just greeted her in our local dialect, which many people may not understand, but it's a pleasure and a delight for me to be here. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also stand on the already established protocol by our sister, Virginia Abu. It is an immense pleasure and a delight for me to be here on this important occasion. Talk about creating safe learning communities and to particularly thank the Right Honorable Gordon Brown and Honorable Minister for Planning, Finance and Budget for leading this initiative and working with all the important segments of the population on this. You would have noticed that we have a strong delegation of governors here, and I believe we're still expecting 2 more of my colleagues. My vice chairman is here, the Right Honorable Minu Tambuwal, the governor of Sokoto State. My elder brother is here, the governor of Kaduna State. And I know that the governors of Niger and Oyo will join us in the course of this program. And the reason for that is simple. We are at the receiving end of this challenge, and we must thank those who are stepping up to the plate to work collaboratively to address this issue. Over the last few months, I've had to lead delegations of governors to Katsina on account of Kankara, to Zamfara on account of Jangebe, and to Niger on account of the Kagara incident. Of course, since then, we've also experienced another major abduction in Afaka and Kaduna State. Thankfully, the students abducted are mostly returned now, and I know the governor is still working assiduously to get the rest of them back. Way back before then, we've had to deal with Chibok, we've had to deal with Buniyadi, we've had to deal with Dapchi. Those are the major ones. There are minor incidents like this. The primary responsibility of government is to ensure security and the welfare of the citizens as enshrined in our own constitution. And at the subnational level, this is an issue that we're daily grappling with. Government has always had to deal with some form of insecurity in our schools, be it cultism or student riots. But what we're experiencing now is a new and much more complex form of insecurity. But we've also had responses to this. I remember in the aftermath of the Civil War in the 70s, the Nigerian government decided that those who were demobilized from the Nigerian military should be sent to school for safety and security. And many of us would recall ex-servicemen who came to our schools and offered protection, set up cadet schools, and assisted in ensuring security and safety for our students. We are here as governors because we believe that this matter is one for us to be at the forefront of. Not just because we're elected to serve our people, because we are also parents. And one of the greatest challenges that we're facing, even without insecurity in school, is ensuring that we have enough kids enrolled in our schools. So, if you now add to that the challenge of insecurity, ordinarily in a number of our states, it's a tough call to get the kids to school. Now there's even an excuse for parents to say, no, I'm not going to send my child to school because Jangebe happened, because Kagara happened, because Kankara happened. We need to stem the tide of this by putting an absolute stop to this scourge of kidnapping and abduction. At the Nigerian Governors Forum, we are committed to working with other partners to ensure that we keep our schools safe. In all our states, we're conducting vulnerability assessments of all our schools. The state security services has been helping to undertake this exercise in our states. We're also working to get more monies available to governments to intensify these efforts. Over 41 billion naira sitting at the Universal Basic Education Commission, simply on account of difficulties around counterpart funding. And one of the steps that governors have taken, and that has been endorsed by Mr. President, is to replace our counterpart funding arrangement with a program for results arrangement, so that these funds can be accessed, but accessed not just for the fun of it, but accessed in a manner that whatever we do with it can also be quantified and evaluated properly. We are also committed to the decentralization of security. Everybody is aware of that. We are referred to as chief security officers. And if anything happens in Kaduna, everybody will knock on the door of Malam Nasri al-Rufai. Not shirking his responsibility, but there is also limitations that he faces, because really he is chief security officer theoretically. And we need to make sure that he becomes chief security officer substantively. And this is one of the ways we must address this on the long term. But in the short term, we need to tighten security measures around our schools. We need to work with our service chiefs, and I'm glad that many of them are here, including the Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, and Chief of Air Staff. The IG is not here, but I hope somebody is... Oh, IG, sorry. You know, I'm still dealing with transition, sorry. So the IG is here. So this is a demonstration of how commitment even our security leaders are to ensuring that our kids really go to schools without having to think about their safety. But in order to make this happen, we feel at the level of the Governors Forum that we must also bring technology to the table. And we've been working at our level with some of our development partners on ensuring georeferenced infrastructure and demographic data for development. Many may be familiar with the Grade 3 program. And really the idea is having enough geographic information system available to pinpoint where the schools are and how protected they are, and what we need to do in order to improve the security and safety of our schools, and then enable us to guarantee efficient allocation of resources. So we believe, just as the Honourable Minister said, that we must review, we must repurpose, and we must re-engage the Safe School Initiative as a public-private partnership. And I'm glad my brother, Chairman of NESD, is also here with his team in order for us to be able to deliver a coordinated response. Yes, the program was launched in 2014, but it would appear that it's gone into some abeyance. So it's good that it's been resuscitated and we are all stepping up to the plate. But even when we do all of what is required of us in stemming the tide of this problem, which is the problem of criminality and brigandage, I think we need to also look at the broader socioeconomic response. It's good to be tough on crime, as the former British Prime Minister used to say, but we must be tougher on the causes of crime. And you cannot have a 33% unemployment rate in any country and not expect to deal with the sociological implications of that. And that is an area that we in the Nigerian Governors Forum believe we must also work collaboratively with our partners and also work with our financial institutions and our private sector operators in order to find the best mechanisms to get our youth back to work. If we do that, we would have fundamentally played our role in addressing the causes of this untoward crisis that the country is dealing with. So on behalf of my brother governors, and I'm sure we'd have cause to elaborate on this in the course of this program, our own ideas and thoughts, I want to thank you once again for putting this together. And I want to say that I'm especially proud of the coordinator. She's spoken to you about her roots. Many people will not know that she's from that backwater of Ekiti State when she speaks English with little pronunciation accent. But thank you, Ayo, for giving us another look. Thank you. God bless you.
The chairman of the Governors Forum, we need to assess the vulnerability of our schools. Nothing could be better said. You know, many years ago, I used to look behind me when I'm driving just to ensure that I understand that there are bad people in the world whose job it is to try and undo us. No matter how much you try to do good things, the security people know that there are always people who are trying to undo us. So we need to assess the vulnerability of our schools. We want to thank Dr. Kayode Fayemi for his intervention. Thank you so very much indeed. As we continue to talk about financing safe schools and securing our learning communities to ensure that they are safe, I would like to please crave your indulgence to quickly make some greetings and recognitions. Mrs. Afolake Taiwo, Director Education, Ministry of Defense, is representing the Honorable Minister of Defense, and she's here with us. Welcome. In order that we keep our records pretty straight, I'm going to run through the names of the persons who go out into the field to secure all of us and keep us safe. The Chief of Defense Staff is General Irabo. He's here. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru, is here. The Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Gambo, is here. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao, is here. The Acting Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, is here. Don't look behind you. We are very secure in this room. Thank you so very much for coming. This is as important to you as it is to all of us. It's time now for us to invite a man who will be delivering the first goodwill, Chancellor of the Exchequer, prior, chairman of his political party, and Prime Minister of the United Kingdom between 2007 to 2010. He is credited with preventing a second depression by hosting the 2009 London G20 Summit. Right Honorable James Gordon Brown, Fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, FRSE, is a man who has eminently distinguished himself in his subject area, and therefore the Academy of Science and Letters awarded him FRSE. He is UN Special Envoy for Global Education, working closely with key partners to galvanize support for the United Nations Global Initiative on Education. He has a PhD in history, and in his early career was a lecturer. He recently concluded research work on globalization and education at the Harvard University Kennedy School. Right Honorable Gordon Brown believes that education is important for a higher standard of living, for improving women's rights, and for a better health care. Help me welcome His Excellency Right Honorable James Gordon Brown, former British Prime Minister.
I'm pleased to address this important conference on behalf of the school pupils of Nigeria. And I want to congratulate the Finance Minister and the states for the organization of this event. I was privileged as UN Special Envoy for Global Education to be part of the path-breaking Safe Schools initiative launched in Nigeria in May 2014 in the aftermath of the tragic kidnapping of the young schoolgirls in Chibok. Safe Schools started with an investment from Their World's Global Business Coalition for Education and was supported by the charity, raising funding from business leaders, government, and government donors, and they were all ready to help today. The initiative was managed by the government and through a UNDP multi-donor trust fund, and it was administered by UNICEF and chaired by the government's Minister of Finance. And Peter Hawkins is here today representing UNICEF. 2,400 students were relocated from high-risk areas in some of the states to 43 federal Unity colleges in other parts of the country. We upgraded school infrastructure, improved physical protection, developed security plans and rapid response system, and measures included better lighting, fencing, and alarm systems, as well as training staff as school safety officers. 400 schools in a box and 35 schools in bags were delivered by UNICEF. By creating double shift schools, we reached nearly 50,000 children, including more than 20,000 girls. Now we have to do more. For since 2014, tragically, 1,030 Nigerian school students have been abducted. Many are still to be returned to their homes. In these years, tragically, 2,295 teachers have been killed. 19,000 have been displaced. And of course, an additional 1.3 million children have faced school closures in this academic year due to the COVID pandemic and insecurity, at a potential cost to Nigeria of 3.4 billion due to what would become unrealized life earnings of those children dropping out of school as a result. Now, the number of out-of-school children is 13 million. It's the highest rate of out-of-school children in the world. 1 in every 5 children in Nigeria is affected. This continuing trend has implications for the socio-economic future of the country, and recent studies have shown that only 20% of children in the northeast of Nigeria who complete primary school can actually read. Given COVID-19 will also likely impact on school safety, we need to integrate in the new Safe Schools program protocols on health safety because of COVID, alongside building an overall narrative of safe schools for safe learning. And I want to announce that the UN organization Education Cannot Wait, which I chair, which is headed by Yasmin Sharif, will engage with the Nigerian government and offer financial help for a Safe Schools initiative. And so we want to work with the Global Coalition for Education and Their World under Justin Van Fleet, who have been initiators of Safe Schools, and Peter Hawkins, UNICEF's very able leader on the ground in Nigeria. We want to help and be part of the coalition for all the important stakeholders, the security and international community to reduce drivers of violent conflict, the governors to effect change on the ground, the education community to redouble efforts to create with the financing led by the Nigerian finance minister, whom I congratulate on her efforts to bring this together today.
The former UK British Prime Minister, Sir Gordon Brown, Honourable FRSC, who has joined us in this very important meeting of financing safe schools for Nigeria. And he has made a major announcement of commitment to education in Nigeria. And with all the roles and the caps that he wears, that's a very formidable announcement that he has made, and a major landmark for this meeting, which has yielded those kinds of commitments, some of which will be coming through later in the day as we enter the various panels and discussions. We understand why we are here, and we know that the purpose is to ensure that we have recommendations and suggestions coming out of the panel meetings and coming out of this meeting. We want to thank the UK British Prime Minister, Mr. Gordon Brown, for joining us at this meeting. It's time now for me to invite a fine gentleman, a pan-Nigerian and patriot, a lover of education, who holds sway at the Ministry of Education as Honorable Minister of State for Education, and he will be speaking on behalf of the Ministry, Honorable Chukwuemeka Nwajuba.
Thank you, my sister. Yabu. I will stand on existing protocols to begin to thank everyone who's gathered here, but more especially our Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning for putting this together. Our ministry, the Ministry of Education, acting on the instructions of Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, wholesomely welcomes and has indeed worked with all the safe school initiatives that we inherited from the 2014 initiative. My elder brother, the ministry, Malam Adama Adamu, sends his wholesome regards as well and will honestly continue to engage this process. We also are at the forefront of this challenge. Everyone at the ministry is committed and working with all the subnationals to review what needs to be done. We do know that with over 153,000 primary schools around Nigeria, none of which is controlled by the federal government and at the base of the education spectrum, must engage with all the owners at the subnational level because the governors at the states own these schools along with some private individuals. We move there to the 22,000 odd secondary schools in Nigeria, partly owned by the federal government, state governments, and also private individuals, and review the space in which all of these people work. For us, safety in schools would look at the 4 cardinal points from which you can assess safety. The largest, and for which everybody here is present, would be the socio-political environment in which schools operate. There has been a gross destabilization in so many parts of Nigeria. And that is why the military and all the security apparatus of the country need to first of all secure the environment of the country before you start talking about the environment of the school. The second would be the school environment and the communities where they operate. The belief systems that characterize how people engage them and why they do. Third would be the schools themselves. Who is present in the school? Why is the person present in the school? What is the person doing in the school? And can he or she, a teacher, an operator, or any other person in that school, be considered a factor in the safety or otherwise of our children in that climate? Then fourthly, the child, student. What is he bringing to the classroom? In a sociological environment where people have been socialized into believing that there is no merit, why would the child excel at merit? Why is it important for him to learn? Why shouldn't he join a cult in order to advance his cause? Why should he not profile himself as something otherwise than an academic who has come to achieve scholarly? Those social imperatives determine how the fourth and the bigger umbrella of socially secure Nigeria can operate. So as we begin to examine this and profile solutions along those lines, that whether they are at the local government, state, or federal level, would urge to address pointedly how we can review not just the financing, but the human content element. Because my brother, my big brother and friend, the governor of Kaduna State, will always remark that it does not matter how much you do or say, Where are the human elements that will execute this? That is what the challenge of education remains. Thank you. Good morning.
The Honorable Minister of State Education has spoken so very well about how the entire environment of the nation needs to be secure, for our children to be secure. The society must pay more attention. I have always felt that it is imperative that every individual should be responsible for the security of their environment. And it's critical that if you see something, you say something. We want to thank the Honorable Minister of Education, State, for speaking so candidly and with so much candor. Thank you very much indeed. We appreciate you. Welcome. This is when we tweak things a little bit and we go to our first panel. Our first panel would have, and permit me to use my free-range mic so I can walk towards the individuals concerned and make this more interactive. Haste, we must remember, as they always say, and as I always say, I'd like to crave your indulgence before we go to the panel. Women are so critical to how well a society develops. And the woman who has been carrying out shuttle diplomacy across the country, speaking with all stakeholders, making sure women and girls are safe, being busy ensuring that we have a voice, is a woman very much after my heart. The Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Talon, will deliver her goodwill comments.
Thank you, my dear sister Eugenia. I want to join the earlier speakers by standing on existing protocol. But I must commend my dear sister, the Honorable Minister of Finance, for putting this very, very important gathering together to discuss this very, very burning issue of financing safe schools in Nigeria. I stand here with a very heavy heart as a concerned mother to voice out the concerns of Nigerian mothers all over the country over the disturbing trend of what's happening across the country with our children, insecurity in schools. Since 2014, it has been one incident after the other. We've been battling with out-of-school children, ensuring that we reach out and intensify advocacy for our children to be in school. But now with the insecurity, what has happened in Zamfara, Kagara, Kaduna, has created so much fear in the minds of parents, particularly mothers. It's a nightmare for a child to go to school and wouldn't come back. As the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs said, and all the speakers, this is a case of an emergency before all of us. I call on all well-meaning Nigerians to join government in this effort, in this struggle to keep our schools and our environment safe. We have no any other country or nowhere to run to but to remain here and keep our schools safe. The greatest investment any country can give its citizens is education. And if parents are scared to send children to school, where do we run to? education is the greatest hope. It is life. It is wealth. It is power. Without education, none of us will be in this hall. I call on all of us to be ambassadors, to be vanguards of speaking out, of giving the right information to our security chiefs. I salute all our security chiefs for the efforts they are making, but we all must do more. I celebrate all our international community for the concern and your commitment of being here. I particularly acknowledge UNICEF for their burning concerns over our children. Looking around the pictures here is enough for all of us to put our heads in shame and cry. Government alone cannot do this. I call on all of us to rise up to the occasion. It is an emergency on our hands, and we must do something. I thank you.
Very much, Honorable Minister of Women Affairs talked about how important it is for our children to go to school. I'd like to recognize very quickly the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, who is here present with us. And these masks are terrible because I didn't even see. I'd like to welcome her and thank her for joining us. This is the time when we invite the chair of the first panel, my sister, Mrs. Mariam Owais, Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria on social investment. She's going to be chairing this first panel. There you go. Please join me as I welcome. Seems like it's raining brothers and sisters today, so the Executive Governor of Kaduna State, His Excellency Malam Nasir El-Rufai, my brother and friend. I'd like to invite to join that panel Mr. Aswe Igodalo, Chairman, Nigeria Economic Summit Group. And I would like to invite the Chief of Defense Staff, who would be representing the National Security Advisor on this panel. Please help me welcome General Irabo. We have word that His Excellency Abubakar Sani Bello, Executive Governor of Niger State, is making his way, and if he comes some time while the panel is still on, we will admit him in the panel. This first panel is the economic and social impact of insecurity on education, and it will focus on the urgency of the need to address out-of-school children. What is the magnitude of the challenge Nigeria is facing, and what is the impact? Mrs. Mariam Owais, you've got 50 minutes as chair of this panel. We look forward to erudition. As you can see, those on the panel are those who have spoken before. You've heard them. They know where they are going, and they know what should be done. I therefore wish to hand over now to Mrs. Mariam Owais, Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria on Social Investment. It's over to you.
So good morning, Honorable Minister of Finance and Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I stand on existing protocols in view of the fact that we are running late on time. It's my privilege and honor to chair this very, very important panel that has the governor representing government and private sector, and the chair of the National Economic Summit, and also our security agencies, our very distinguished Chief of Defense Staff, to discuss the issues, the implications, the impact of all the abductions, the disruptions we have seen in the education sector over the past few years, and especially in the last few months. It's going to focus on the urgency, on the need to engage on these issues, and to generally try and ascertain how to strategically make an impact, a positive impact, and improve the situation in all aspects within a federation that has autonomous units, budgets that are different, the issues of who takes charge of security, the need for coordination in respect, at least basic minimum standards, in respect of some of the issues or all of the issues that we need to actually focus on to ensure that our children are safe and secure and they are in a learning environment that is conducive for them. I'd like quickly to engage for 2 minutes, if you don't mind, Your Excellency, for you to engage us on what has been happening in Kaduna State, being a direct, recipient of all these issues, the multidimensional issues. What has Kaduna State done in respect of the human capital, the violence, the disruptions, and the issues of that have caused us to all convene in this space? Thank you, Excellency.
Well, thank you very much, Mariam. Good morning, everyone. I want to particularly thank and recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance for using her convening power to get us all here. This is a very important subject that is very close to the hearts of all the governors, because we wake up daily wondering what's next since these abductions of students started. Banditry has been with us for a while. It has been evolving from blocking highways to attacking communities, and now it has entered its third and most lethal phase, which is targeting students, particularly girls. And this has had a major impact on the delivery of education in our region. And this is a region that is already known for having the highest number of out-of-school children. So this problem is serious, it's of massive scale, and it requires not just national will, but also the support of the international community. In this regard, we have to thank Prime Minister Gordon Brown and all the work that the UN system has been doing, particularly UNICEF in this regard. I will just outline the scale of the problem using Kaduna as an example. In Kaduna State, we have over 2 million children in primary schools and slightly above 500,000 in secondary schools. We have about 500 secondary schools, and we have studied what has happened in our neighboring states, and we've come to the conclusion, one, that these bandits abduct secondary school students. They don't abduct primary school students. So that reduced the scale of our concern. Second, they tend to target boarding schools because they tend to attack at night. Third, they prefer girls' schools because girls attract more value in terms of kidnapping revenues. Fourth, the kidnapping is largely a rural phenomenon, so they usually attack schools that are remote, that are very far from the closest base of security agencies. And when Kankara, Jangebe, and Kagara happened, we knew that Kaduna would have its turn, and we quickly sat with the security agencies, particularly the garrison commander of the Nigerian Army, and we mapped all our schools in the vulnerable areas. We concluded that 42 schools were at risk. From our GIS maps, we concluded that 42 secondary schools were at risk. But the garrison commander and the police and the Air Force decided to physically visit every school to assess the level of vulnerability, and we ended up having to close only 10 schools because the other 32 were considered safe. Safe in the sense that the security agencies assured us they could get to any school within 30 minutes, because the kidnapping operation usually takes about 2 hours from the information we got. So if the security agencies can get to a school within 30 minutes, then that school is deemed safe because the kidnappers will not be able to conclude their operations. And this this is what we saw in Kaduna. There have been 4 attempts to kidnap in Kaduna, but thanks to the vigilance of communities and our security agencies and the advanced intelligence from the SSS, were able to foil successfully 3 of them. One was partly successful, the Afaka Federal College of Mechanization, where 39 young people were abducted and 10 have been returned, 29 are still in custody. Afaka was a surprise because we didn't even map Afaka as vulnerable because it's right in the center of the urban areas. It's facing the Nigerian Defense Academy, so it was very close to a military installation. So we didn't even consider it one of the schools that are likely to be attacked. That's why we were surprised. But in spite of that, the garrison commander and his team got there in less than 30 minutes, and that's why even though the school had a population of over 300 students, they couldn't abduct more than 10% of the population. So this is the scale of the problem. And in our view, what we have found in Kaduna State and where we need help, and I think this applies to most of the states in the north, is one, most of these schools are vulnerable because they are not fenced. We build schools because of the levels of safety in northern Nigeria at the time. Some schools are not fenced. So the first thing to do is to fence all our schools to make it at least difficult for the kidnappers. Second, there is minimal security presence in the schools. And this security presence, to be effective, has to be localized. You have to organize local communities and incentivize them to protect their schools. We are using the school-based management committees to do that. Third, we need to invest in the security agencies to be able to respond quickly. Our security agencies are overstretched. They are overstretched in terms of manpower, they are overstretched in terms of equipment and technology. We need to invest in the security agents. They need more vehicles, they need MRAPs, because these bandits are quite sophisticated. They need superior firepower to be able to face the bandits. Finally, we need to devolve policing. The chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum has made that point, but we must have governors having some level of control over policing, because right now, the weakest link in the law enforcement chain is the Nigerian police. It is overstretched, it is undermanned, it is under-equipped, it is under-financed, and the governors in all the states bear a disproportionate burden of the operations of the Nigerian police. And the only way that we can double the footprint of the police all across the country is to amend the constitution to allow state policing. I'm happy that the National Assembly has taken steps in that regard. The bills are at second reading, and I hope this will be done very, very quickly so that we have more police to be able to deploy to areas of need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That's a very comprehensive brief. I'd like to turn to my brother, Mr. Aswe Godalo, give us his thoughts on the private sector collaboration that can work, and the efforts of government to solve a lot of the challenges.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Your Excellencies here present, honorable ministers, good morning. Honorable Minister of Finance, thanks for convening this. Like the governor said, he said, use your convening power to convene this session. Thank you. Mariam, the private sector is fundamentally affected by the issues of the ongoing insecurity as regards schools, which directly translates to looking at the future of the country and the development and growth, or the stunting of the development and growth of the country looking into the future. Figures have been thrown around 34 billion will be lost by children that haven't had the opportunity to continue school because of insecurity. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I was looking at some statistics yesterday, and I see that there's a causal link between unemployment and insecurity. And it's really nearly like a chicken and egg situation. We don't know which we should tackle first, where we have capacity constraints, or how do we tackle both? Because I know that unemployment leads to idleness and ability for those unemployed to be used by bandits, kidnappers, and such people. So what do we do? The private sector is truly committed to creating employment in Nigeria, truly committed to it. And the private sector is committed to supporting Mr. President in dragging 100 million out of poverty. But I'd turn to the Honorable Minister of Finance and I'll say, Madam, we need to do a lot more to create an enabling environment. We need to do a lot more. If businesses don't feel welcome, if the businesses are not supported, they'll go elsewhere and they won't stay here. Now, if we don't support businesses and we don't support small and medium scale enterprises, then jobs will not be created. There's a limit to the jobs that government can create. So in every country in the world that develops or emerges from the third world to the first world, the environment for investment must be attractive and encouraging. So we have a lot of work to do so that we're employing people. Lagos State has over nearly 2 million people unemployed. And I don't want to talk about underemployment because that's close to unemployment. If Lagos State has 2 million unemployed people, if you extrapolate to the other states in the country, and Lagos State is said to be where there's a lot more jobs available. So the private sector is really gung-ho to invest in this economy. The private sector wants to create jobs. The private sector wants to support government, but the environment needs to be right. And the private sector is working with government to try and create a better environment. Another disaster that's going to come out of all of this is that we're now going to be having children that are underskilled and not fit for purpose. So even when we have the jobs, they can't fit into the jobs because they're not going to school. What's the quality of education? The teachers are afraid for their lives, so they're not even paying attention to upscaling. So we have all of these problems, and so we have to truly focus. The Minister of Education said the environment has to be secure for us to start thinking of securing schools. Yes and no. We can help the security forces because His Excellency just mentioned the issue of community support and local policing. I think if we let each community understand the fundamental disadvantage of not providing an environment that is secure by providing intelligence, the communities see people who are strange people riding motorcycles who are not part of the community. How much intelligence do they give the security forces? So I think there has to be a holistic work. Private sector, government, communities, religious leaders, traditional leaders, everybody needs to come together to say, we want our children to stay in school because that's the future of the country. If we invest $1 or 1 naira, we get a GDP increase by nearly $20 or 20 naira. It's a no-brainer. So we all need to come together, and like I said, I'm really glad the Minister of Finance has convened this, because we all need to pay attention. It's probably the most debilitating factor in our country's growth at this point in time. Security or education, I'm not even quite sure which it is, but we need to tackle this, and the private sector is committed to joining hands with everybody else to tackle this, because that's the only way Nigeria is going to come out of where we are now economically. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those very incisive comments. I'd like to invite of Defense Staff give us his own insights in respect of the strategies being taken and how you feel these challenges can be addressed in the short term and the medium term, even in the long term, because it has to be phased. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, and Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say that I'm delighted to be part of this discussion. Just only yesterday, I had earlier on commissioned a team to look at the issues of abductions and what the military, along with other security agencies, could do. And I got a feedback yesterday, only for me today, at the heart of the findings of the report is the financing, only for me here today to be in the midst of very eminent persons discussing financing safe schools. Well, for me, what we're doing as armed forces and other security agencies is to actually bring a better understanding to bear as to the fact that security is everybody's business. And more so that given the current threat environment, security threat environment, where issues of civil policing and military duties is becoming very blurred. The distinction between civil policing and military, essentially military duties, are becoming blurred. Then, of course, it becomes more of a challenge in understanding what the military should do in upscaling the security environment. But given that is within the context of internal security, we join hands with the police and other security agencies to ensure that greater understanding is brought to bear, what we need to do to provide more of area security that will significantly boost the security disposition of our various communities wherein these schools are located, is what is also being undertaken. We equally, of course, undertake operations around the where many have described as ungoverned spaces, where many have also described as undergoverned spaces, to ensure that criminal elements that hibernate in those areas are taken out. But beyond that, what I perhaps need to indicate at this point is that, the Governor Rufai, has spoken about finance, regarding issues that have to do with the police and other security agencies, as well as earlier speakers have alluded to the fact that there are issues that have to do with funding security agencies. But you see, you really cannot give what you do not have. I want to say that investment in our schools, investment in our education is actually an investment in security and defense. Investment in defense and security institutions is actually investment to securing our lives. So whatever do you take to boost the funding issues that have to do with both education and security and defense, of course, is a good investment. Let me also perhaps say that under the current environment, everyone, being that security is everybody's responsibility, I'd like to encourage us that for every danger, we must rise up with courage. Sometimes you find that our communities and citizens have tended to create a narrative that presents the security agencies as the only individuals or persons who have the responsibility to secure an environment. That is not, that's truly a misrepresentation. I'd like to urge that everyone should play a more critical role. Of course, I'm grateful to the support that we received, but I think we need to upscale that kind of support by way of providing information and intelligence that will enable the defense and security agencies to be able to undertake their task. Lastly, what I would also like to say at this time is to say that our partners, friends of Nigeria, need to also understand that a situation where you find insecurity pervading the length and breadth of a geographical space, in this case Nigeria, is actually not in the interest of the entire global community. I think that, and that's why I'm glad that the partners of this initiative are, also friends of Nigeria, that perhaps we may need to also take it, beyond that to be able to give greater support, given that the impact of insecurity, of course, would not be in the interest of the global community. But I must say that so far so good. Government is hugely committed to ensuring that the requirements of the armed forces and the security agencies are provided. Likewise, we've had engagement with our friends and partners of Nigeria, but we believe that as good as those interventions are, it could be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the information you've given us. I'd like to go back to Governor of Kaduna State, who has clearly been embattled, but is obviously on top of the situation. Out-of-the-box thinking is required in respect of the emerging challenges, some of which must include, of course, technology. And it would be interesting to hear from you what Kaduna State has done to be able to curb some of the disruptions that you have witnessed in recent times, and how it is being shared within the Governors Forum, how we're able to see that there's more coordination and minimum standards across board to be able to be more effective in trying to resolve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. We've approached this problem in two ways. First of all, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had already acquired technology for online learning, okay, and we use a variety of platforms from the web to radio and TV. So we've continued classes, particularly for those taking their WAEC exams, NECO, junior secondary school examinations, and those that are in their final year of primary school. So we continued throughout the pandemic. And with the onset of the insecurity, we've had to close some schools, as I said. What we did was not to send those children back to school, but to take this back home, but to redistribute them across other schools. So for instance, the students of Government Technical College Kajuru, which is considered an unsafe school, were moved to Government Technical College Kaduna. And of course that has put pressure on the hostels, the classrooms and so on, but we didn't have a choice. So we've had to introduce 2 streams of learning, morning and afternoon, and also augment that with technology. So at the level of the educational sector, we are increasingly investing in technology because we think that's the way to be able to educate many people using minimal resources. But I think the security agencies also need more advanced technology. The Air Force needs more drones. Drones are much cheaper than planes, and there are drones now that can carry payload, including missiles. But our position as governors, and I think we are unanimous in this because we met as Northern State governors and we've met with the president on this subject. Our unanimous position is what is needed now is to wipe out the bandits. We must go into this forest. Nobody living in that forest is innocent, and just kill them all. It is the only way to end this. And I am very happy to say that the Chief of the Air Staff has been bombing them. So you will see there is a decline in the banditry. He has been bombing them. But what is needed is coordinated action with air power, use of drones, because they hear the sound of the aircraft, they hide in the bushes, they disappear, or they use human shields. But drones can be more targeted, they can be more selective, and they can be quiet. They can get to a place and drop their payload more efficiently than an aircraft. And drones can also fly in circumstances in which airplanes cannot due to bad weather, for instance. So we need a combination of air power, and then we need troops on the ground, augmented with local expertise and knowledge. Just, we need to 1, 2, 3 month operation, just try to kill all the bandits. It's the only way to stop this. Because the only other way, which is the position we've taken as Kaduna State government, that will not pay a penny to bandits, is not shared by all. People have asked me, what if your son has been kidnapped? And I said it, I will not pay any ransom, but that's a personal decision. Every family has to take its own personal decision, and I cannot impose that on anyone, but that is the solution. So long as these bandits are being paid, it will be a business. So the only option we have is to ensure that we kill them all. And I think we have the coercive power to be able to do that. If the security agencies are properly incentivized and equipped, I think it can be done. This is the way to go.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'd like to throw a challenge to the chairman of the National Economic Summit. I don't know what the private sector can do in terms of supporting what government is doing and what the security agencies are doing, especially in terms of the issues that actually will make an impact in terms of technology. How do we get children, how do we track them just in case it happens? What can the private sector do? Can you convene and bring to bear all the various sectors that are able to come up with out-of-the-box ideas to strategically address these issues? Because there are many ideas out there. And I believe the National Economic Summit.
Nigerian Economic Summit.
Would be
Thank you.
able to-
Thank you very much, Madam.
Okay.
In 2014, there was a fund established to support this process of safe schools. And I think after a while, things kind of petered out. There was a private sector UN initiative. And I think we need to go back there and go and revisit this fund and see where it is and see how we can get a lot more contribution. Because I think in all of this, funding is required. A lot of funding is required. Funding is required to support safety in the schools. The governor just mentioned the issue of fencing schools. Something as simple as fencing schools will go a long way. And the higher the fences, the better. So funding is required. Funding is also required. Unluckily, we got into COVID. But there was that, in a bad thing, there are sparks. There was that spark that caused a lot of private sector, public sector to start digitalizing and going virtual. So a lot of states started teaching their students virtually. So I think part of what we need to do now is put a lot more technology in schools, tracking technologies. The governor talked about drones. Some drones are good to drop payloads. Other drones can gather intelligence, can observe, can see where the students are, can provide intelligence to the security agencies. So all of this technological support and help to provide a strong security base can be funded, and the private sector can galvanize funding. It happened for COVID. The private sector worked with the CBN governor to galvanize funding for COVID. I think the private sector has worked on flood relief. It has worked on the IDP. So the private sector will come together and support government. So I think the most important thing is for the private sector, I'm talking short term, because in the long term, what we need are jobs. That's what we need in the long term, plenty of jobs. And we need to have an environment where we can have plenty of jobs. But in the short term, let's try and raise some money. Let's try and provide support, fence the schools we can fence, provide technology for security, support the military. Because I was going to ask the Chief of Defense Staff, is it possible to have a special, because I see Kaduna State doing, through working with the garrison commander, something close to that, being able to get to trouble spots in 30 minutes. Is it possible for security agencies and the security under you to have a special force for school security? Is it something we can do? Something trained like the Navy SEALs in the United States, where in less than 10 minutes, in 15 minutes, they can get to trouble spots. Because honestly, there must be serious deterrent. Most of the things that will ensure that this thing goes away are more long-term. But in the short term, we must have this deterrence. We must ensure that the schools are truly safe and that people know if they come there, they won't be able to get to the kids. But answering your question, yeah, the private sector is ready to support. And one more thing, and I go back to Madam Honorable Minister, the economy of Nigeria is overregulated. The overregulation of the economy of Nigeria and private sector participation affects investments. It's a chicken and egg thing. If you're a developing economy, you want people to come in here, bring money, invest, create jobs, pass on technology, pass on skills, help, because if there are jobs and people are earning, then you distribute income, you redistribute income. So it's a chicken and egg, but we have to go back to the base. We need to encourage and attract investments into Nigeria. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. But beyond money, I'd like to see that the private sector also supports with technical
That's what
expertise.
I said
Yes.
we would use the money to support technically and technologically, because yeah, we will do that.
Thank you.
Definitely.
So in addition to the question that the chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit asked you, I'd like to just engage you on the issues that are critical, are there any ideas that the security agencies can share across Nigeria in terms of drills, alarm signal, because there are many things that even children and teachers within the schools need to begin to become aware of, to become more diligent, because sometimes these high walls, can also be a problem. I visited Dapchi after, and I realized that the fact that the walls were not that high enabled some of the children to jump over. So it could be for good or for bad, but we need to have our children more aware, more diligent, our teachers. Isn't there a platform that you can engage with to ensure that all these security issues are shared across all the state governments, the local governments, for better outcomes? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for that question. The straight answer to your question is yes, we do have protocols that we have articulated and shared with the stakeholders that we consider to be relevant, especially with respect to safe schools. Security tips are to be given. We, of course, have collected, but of course, there are also other elements of education having to bring it to the public space. But beyond that, it's something that I believe that should be mixed with other, what I consider to be practices that Minister of Education, Federal Minister of Education, for example, and of course, in line with the various state government that it can put together. Now, if I may leave that and perhaps address some of what the chairman of the NESG, the question he asked. Looking at the organization of the armed forces, for example, you realize that we have formations and units across the country based on certain parameters that we have set out. Now, these units and formations work in partnership with other security agencies, and that's the reason why you find that there is a coordinating meeting that holds in, either at the divisional level or the brigade levels, or so in this case, I'll talk about the state. Now, they share information and who is to take action. That is talking about the response mechanisms, that who is responsible for whatever has been assessed to be the response mechanism will not be taxed in that regard. The reference that the governor touched on is actually arising from that kind of setting. It is the duty of the garrison commander, that is one division garrison commander, to oversee the entire Kaduna township. And because it's within his area of responsibility, then he becomes the focal person that will address issues of that nature. That does not imply that he has not gotten any input from either the police, the DSS, and of course, he talked on the Air Force. And in other jurisdictions where you find perhaps the maritime environment, then Then, of course, you find the Navy also playing a key part in that. So it's a coordinated thing. It's not a one-man issue. But I just thought what perhaps I also may need to add is that, you see, the narratives that we find within the media space is something that is a little bit misleading. I would rather that we begin to tone down the hype that we give to issues that have to do with, insecurity. The reason is this: besides stoking fear amongst the people, there is some sense of confusion that also is introduced, such that everyone does not, it will appear that they are no longer focused, thinking right, having to be in the best frame of mind to be able to understand what needs to be done at every point in time. So I would rather urge the media, those in the media space, to understand that a failed nation is actually not also good for the business of the media. And it's only when you have a better understanding as to the impact of this that one is able to make progress. We desire to live in an environment where peace and security prevail. It's where there is order, where of course movement across the length and breadth of this nation is without let. But of course, that also comes with a lot of responsibility. There has to be a lot of investment that is done toward, and I think that the plans that we are already concretizing, in my view, will lead us to that setting. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that last point. I think it is very well taken, and I hope it is well noted. I don't know if Eugenia is around. She said that it was 1 minute each, but it's gone beyond 1 minute. So I don't know if I still can open the floor to 2 questions.
Just 2 questions. That's
Okay.
about it.
So is there anybody that has anything to add? Okay, we have the media guru himself. Thank you very much. Mr. Nduka Ebeabuna. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. The panelists, the governors, the Chief of Defense Staff said a failed nation is not good for the media. And Wajiba was clapping. A failed nation is not good for anybody. The media is a reflection of our society. And we all have to work together to fix the country. Can we have safe schools without a safe nation? That's the key question. Can safe schools operate in isolation? Do we have enough security personnel in 774 local governments of Nigeria to secure us all? Can 200,000 to 400,000 policemen secure us all? Can a decentralization of the police be done in such a way that we own security in our communities? How can we all be engaged? How can we keep ourselves safe? Education, like Arufat has said, is two-pronged. You can use technology to bridge some of the gaps. But can we really not support the idea that we should not negotiate with bandits? If all governors, all community leaders take that hard line not to pay ransom, I believe half of our problem will be solved.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for those comments.
Thank you.
Yes. The intervention, any more? Does anybody have an intervention to make?
You do need to close your panel. I do see a lady over there. could you keep it very short, please? We don't have much time. Thank you.
Excellencies and the members of the panel. I'm from the Victim Support Fund. And I just want to make a comment, especially to the, speak to the private sector. The private sector, I know at the beginning of SSI was very key in mobilizing the fund that came into the Victim Support Fund. And we contributed from the Victim Support Fund 2 billion naira from General T.Y. Najima retired to support that whole process. I believe that there are well-meaning Nigerians that are grounded in this country and do support and do mobilize resources to support such education initiatives. What are we really doing to target such philanthropies and make sure that they concretely support this process? Because I believe that financing will have to be based concretely in the country, especially at the community level, to help people mobilize whatever little resources. And Nigerians must have ownership of it. And I don't seem to hear or see that strongly in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you can respond.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam. The private sector is actually, in such circumstances, the private sector reaches out to its members who are willing and able to support. But I would like to say categorically that the structure for this support and maintaining this support and disbursing funding for whatever initiatives we determine must be clear and effectively transparent. That way it's easier to encourage people to donate support. But the private sector, like I said before, we experienced this last year and in other years, and we'll continue doing it.
So at this point, I'd like to thank very much the Governor of Kaduna State, the Chief of Defense Staff, and the Chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group for a very engaging and very productive session, if I may say so myself. We look forward to the rest of the discussions at the end of this all, and I wish you all a safe journey back home. Thank you.
Very much indeed. That session has come to an end, and we would like to just pick out some of the things that the Chief of Defense Staff had said concerning the media. Drumming the gongs of war will not take Nigeria anywhere. Drumming the gongs of war will not take Nigeria anywhere. As citizens, we need to be socially responsible, and the Nigerian media are part of the citizenry. I'd like to thank very much the panel chaired by the very well-spoken and erudite Hajia Mariam Uwais. And as I said, it was raining brothers and sisters on the panel. Would like to thank all of you. What a great job you've done. As we go to the next panel, I'd like to say that there is a gavel for time, and we do need to keep it streamlined. The Chief of Defense Staff has spoken, Mr. Aswe Godalo has spoken, and His Excellency Nasir El-Rufai has spoken. Thank you so very much. I'd like to call on organizers to prepare for the next group. And before we do that, I'd like to announce that there are at least 1,000 people who have joined us online. We have 1,000 attendees online, and I would like to quickly let you know who some of them are, even though I did see the Honorable Minister of Aviation, Captain Hadi Sirika, walk through the door. And he's amongst us and has joined us and exchanging greetings, as it were. We have the Honorable Minister of State, Works and Housing, Abubakar D. Aliyu, has joined us online. The Minister of the FCT, Mohammed Musa Bello, has joined us online. Bolaji Balogun, Co-Chair, Private Sector Advisory Group on SDGs, has joined us online. Shubham Choudhury, World Bank Country Director, has joined us online. The Honorable Minister of State Environment, Mrs. Sharon Ikazo, has also joined us online. A As you know, the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Sadia Farouk, is here with us. Justin Van Fleet, President of Their World, has joined us online. The Honorable Minister of Mines and Steel Development has joined us online. Mr. Tijani Mohammed, Deputy Director, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has joined us online. And the Honorable Minister of State, Trade and Investment, Haja Mariam Katagum, has also joined us online. So I'd like to thank all of those who have joined us online and ask you to please stay the tide. I'd like to introduce Mr. Anthony Ogbe, Director, Research and Analysis, representative of the Director General, National Intelligence Agency. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to, at this point, invite the next panel. And while that is going on, I'd like to encourage us all to settle down. Cameras, cameramen, journalists, I'd like to crave your indulgence as we go forward. Engineer Ahmed Kawu is here representing the Senior Special Assistant of the President. Engineer Kawu is of the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals. The next panel is ready to mount the podium. I'd like to call very quickly the session chair, Ms. Aisha Garba Mohammed, Senior Education Specialist, World Bank. Is she here? Ms. Aisha Garba Mohammed, Senior Education Specialist of the World Bank. Panel 2. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like you to please clear the surround so that we can see the panel and the chair. His Excellency Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, Executive Governor of Sokoto State, to please join the podium now as a panelist. The Honorable Minister of State Education, Honorable Chukwemeka Nwajubia, could please join the panelists. And Chief Oliver Stoppel could please join at this point. Representative of UNODC, UN Offices on Drugs and Crime. And I would like to call on the Acting Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, join this panel. Panel 2 is on current activities to protect schools and gaps to be addressed. The session will address current activities to protect schools and get children back into school and education. And this is the panel that will be discussing this at length and looking at progress to date, current coping mechanisms, and what gaps need to be addressed to ensure safe learning communities. Some of these conversations might also border on how to manage young people who have come off from those threatening situations and how their psychology needs to be looked at. I'd like now to hand over to the session chair. I'd like to please crave your indulgence to return to your seats and settle down so that we can begin the second panel. Every single panel is critical.
Who's that word?
Can we return to our seats, please, so we can hear? The session chair, Ms. Aisha Garba Mohammed. You know we're working against time, so it's up to you now to manage your panel. The last 10 minutes, 1 or 2 questions, no longer. And please, when you ask questions, keep it to the minimum. Don't ask multi-pronged, multi-dimensional, multi-layer questions. My sincere apologies. The United States Ambassador, Her Excellency Mary Beth Leonard, would join this panel. My apologies. My apologies. Okay, there she is.
So we can...
Yes, the chair can start.
Yeah. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to stand on the already existing protocols established. Thank you. So it's my honor to be here today to moderate one of the sessions on this important topic of the security situation in Nigeria, particularly the kidnappings of students from schools. We have heard from recent speakers and also from the media we read. We have seen that more than 1,000 students were kidnapped, from the Chibok girls to the girls in Yobe, to 300 boys in Katsina, to more than 300 girls in Zamfara. And we have also heard how parents are particularly concerned about the safety of their children, and how kidnappers tend to target more girls than boys because they're easier targets. I think it's also important to note that already, based on the data statistic, we do know that northern Nigeria has one of the lowest transition and completion of secondary school by girls. We know that after the kidnapping of Chibok girls, we have seen in Borno from 40% transition, the drop to 20% in Borno just because of Chibok. So this is a really particularly concerning, and I'm happy here today to moderate this session that is focusing on the activities that federal government is doing, state government is doing, security agency are doing, multilateral agencies and international governments are doing to protect students in schools from kidnappings. I may start with you of education. I would like to call on you first. Yeah. To hear your own thoughts as well as your insight in terms of the activities that Ministry of Education is currently undertaking to ensure students are safe in school.
Thank you, and good morning once again to everybody. I would just recap my earlier statements that the Federal Ministry of Education is a coordinating ministry. As what learnings and processes for it are nationwide. But I did remark, and that it's worthy of note, that really the Federal Ministry of Education, apart from the approval of curriculum and syllables around the country, really plays very limited roles at the primary education level. Because you take a child from 5 years old and gets him to 11 years old when he now exits the primary and goes into the post-primary. The federal government is a player at the post-primary level. We own 110 federal colleges, what we describe as unity colleges. We are almost like a model unit. And around them, we've done this fencing. We've used them as models for what should be done nationwide. But the bulk of all the education institutions that mostly are at risk, and I'm sure you heard that from the governor of Kaduna State when he gave you an example of 500 schools in secondary schools in Kaduna State, will tell you that the most at risk are the secondary schools nationwide. That's where there is a lot of the problems that affect safety, whether they are cultism, kidnapping, violence to girls or young persons, when teachers are not as good as molestations, or all the things that we consider as things that make schools unsafe are a bit more prevalent at the secondary school level than they are in the rest of it. But because by the time we progress to tertiary schools, tertiary institutions, they're a little bit more able to take care of themselves. They can challenge incursions against their privacy. They can challenge incursions. You still hear about sex for marks. You still hear about violence to young ladies or trade, all those kind of other levels of societal pressures that constitute some unsafety in schools. However, at that level, they're a bit more equipped to take care of themselves. Where this challenge is posited more aptly, it's at the secondary school level, and every state, like Governor Fayemi did point out, should be doing a risk assessment at that community level, because not all of them are challenged the same way. The pressure of society at large, the larger society, is key in understanding this and appreciating it, because you know the Ministry of Education has over the years set out from Nomadic Education Commission, the all sorts of commissions we have, mass literacy, adult, anything to address the out-of-school children syndrome. Everything's in the context. And I'm sure you have also heard that the president has graciously approved the program of the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry to pursue the alternate school program, which is targeted at looking for those who, for any reason, are unable to take up any part of all the establishments of the Ministry of Education, those who refuse to come to secondary school, those who refuse every program that we've thrown at them, and yet they've remained out of school. The Humanitarian Affairs Ministry is now going to tackle all of that. But there are plans afoot between us and the Ministry of Interior, where we have proposed. Last year, the Civil Defense advertised for people to enroll, and nearly 1.2 million Nigerian youths asked for them to be employed, and none of them can be employed. In a country where you have this challenge, an opportunity opens up immediately for the private sector to help us. We can take 300,000 of these people, and at 12 per team in every secondary school in Nigeria, build a secure school workforce around Nigeria. Yes, taking out the bandits, taking out all the bad people in the country will help, but you must discourage them by having foots on ground in every school in Nigeria. And you can have a work team around this. In that way, you solve the multiple problem of unemployment, you solve the problem of having engagement at the place, and you have educated people who can report to you and deal with it. And we can fund this with less than 40 billion naira in a year, because this does everybody's problem and solves it ahead of security. So truly, the Ministry of Education, working in partnership with different ministries, is evolving continuous means of engaging what we regard as things that are constraints to safe learning in schools. Thank you.
So much, Honorable Minister. I think I will come back to you to discuss a bit further regarding the coordination role that you mentioned, specifically on the security. But before we talk about that, I would like to call on His Excellency, Governor of Tambuwal, because you also mentioned that the mandate of secondary school is actually with the state. So it's a state responsibility in terms of students. So would you give us your insight, and particularly the coping mechanisms that state governors are putting in place to ensure students are safe? And you can talk in the context of Sokoto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Let me join those who have spoken earlier than me to thank the Honourable Minister of Finance and all other partners for putting this together for us to come and talk and engage and come up with solutions to this very, very important challenge that we are facing as a nation. In Sokoto State, when particularly the abduction of the Kankara boys happened, our initial reaction was first to, in December 2020, close all of the boarding schools neighboring Zamfara State and Niger Republic, because of course you know that we share a long border with Niger Republic, and because we from our intelligence was part of these problems that we're facing, some of them actually are transborder criminals. So we had to close down all of the boarding schools around those areas, particularly the eastern flank of the state. But on the happening of Jangebe abduction, which is closer home in Zamfara State, we realized that closing schools is no more the solution. And what we actually now introduced at our emergency meeting of the Security Council was merger of schools. After having been briefed by the Honorable Commissioners in charge of education, we came up with merger of schools, particularly the boarding schools, and where we had situations whereby we cannot, the schools cannot contain some students. We asked them to go back to their communities as day schools, day students in their respective communities. And what the state government came up with was enhanced and improved welfare package, extra effort of the teachers in those schools, and of course ensuring that also all of our boarding schools, we will enforce the security of the schools by requesting from the police, from the civil defense, for more personnel to be on ground in our schools and employ more guards at our schools. And of course, we engaged in community awareness with the traditional leaders and other leaders of the communities to ensure that all of us are working together in ensuring that the schools are well secured. And of course, we also introduced early warning and monitoring of school environment and an alarm system whereby all the principals we tried to install some alarms in dormitories of students whereby they can press buttons and alert the principal and other school authority leadership if in case of any eventuality. But generally, we actually ensured that we enhanced the security of the schools. Most of our schools in Sokoto are fenced, if not only for one or two boarding schools, most of them in Sokoto State are fenced. So we don't have that challenge of porous, open and unfenced boarding schools in Sokoto State.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Maybe just if I can ask you to add a little regarding maybe some of the challenges, because I'm aware like most of the secondary schools that we have are limited in number, and I'm sure it's the same. And you mentioned merging of schools. So any challenge in terms of, having maybe overcrowded classrooms or boarding hostels, or maybe also in terms of putting more girls or more students at risk by the time you merge them?
What we actually did was we didn't just merge schools like that. We actually carried out an assessment. Which school is having enough infrastructure to take more students? So, and when we realized that we could not have all of them in boarding schools, as I said, we had to send most of them, a number of them, back to their communities for day secondary education, even on shifting basis, because we realized that the challenge is actually the criminals are targeting at our education, and what they wanted to do is to disrupt school, disrupt education, and if possible, stop education of our children completely. So yes, there were challenges of overcrowding in some schools, and I personally inspected their toilet facilities, their dormitories, the classrooms, and we had to do some adjustment to make sure that most of them, if not all of them, are comfortable in school.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I think I'm really happy to hear some of the interventions, measures that are coming out. I really ones that definitely will be lessons learned for others. If I may call on you, Inspector General, in terms of what the police is doing to ensure students are safe in school, and also if you can elaborate a little bit regarding your engagement and partnership with Ministry of Education as well as with state governors in terms of putting these measures in place.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Let me also join my colleagues in thanking the Honorable Minister of Finance for providing this forum. Immediately after the Chibok girls' abduction, there was instruction to the police and other security agents, particularly the civil defense and the military, to join in providing physical security to most of the schools, or to schools around the country. We started this, and at a stage, we are unable to cope with the directives, in the sense that the schools are more in number, and we won't be able to provide physical security. So what we opted to do with the Ministry of Education and our Education Department is to educate people generally on making things that will bring obstacles or making easy target not available around the schools. How do you do that? You do that in terms of trying to provide or trying to see where the school is going to be situated. This is some of the answers that most of the governors gave in terms of either margin schools or trying to identify safe areas and so forth. The threat to schools is almost the same. The only thing is that the threat can be mass abduction or identified and targeted abduction or kidnapping. What I mean by identified and targeted is where people are followed to schools and the deceits are being made, either in trying to go and pick a child that is not your own in the school. This is a targeted abduction where you, okay? So you try to educate people as to how schools should receive coming in, going out, during break, what to eat, who is to bring your child to school, who is to pick. Educate also the children, who is to identify, okay, who will pick you in the school, who will give you food to eat and all that. Then the areas of mass abduction, we have spoken, you have heard about governors and others talking about trying to provide perimeter fencing, trying to see that the dormitories are secured, trying to see that the schools are well illuminated and situated in a targeted. If you look at, for instance, the police as an institution alone, we have over 100 schools, primary schools. Most of them are situated within the barrack, so it is safer. So if you look at schools that are situated not outside the environment completely, where people are living, you see people will patronize it. Then when you come to providing security in boarding schools, that one is largely, it requires a lot of education and it requires a lot of investment. A lot of investment in the sense that the dormitories must be secured, the perimeter fencing must be okay, the gates has to be, there should be physical security. All alone, or above all, is the issue of community policing. We have employed over 70,000 community policing officers from each state, from each local government. And these are people to assist in protecting environment. These are people to assist in providing security together with the police and the civil defense and other things. And they are particularly situated in that particular community. So you can get a lot of education from them in terms of studying the environment, in terms of knowing the environment, in terms of who is with you and who is not with you and so forth. And that is the essence of having the community policing officers, which is in vogue and which we are trying to train, and a lot of governors are supporting us. In fact, we pick it not only in local government, you go down to even communities, and they will be restricted to work in that community together with the security officers. So these are some of the things that we are doing to see that you create obstacles that will make things difficult or not easy target for the bandits to come in and just pick students or children.
Thank you so much, Director General. I think what you said is really important. The Minister of Finance has mentioned the involvement of school-based management committee. And the management committees are members from the committee. Some of them are parents, traditional. So I think quite important what you mentioned, which is because some of them will actually work with the school-based management committee to ensure that schools are safe. And this is, I think, one of the collaborations that is clearly outlined in the discussion of the community policing, and then also the school-based management committees can actually work together in this regard. So if I can call a new U.S. ambassador to Nigeria to also give us your perspective in terms of the activities that has been mentioned, and then also in addition to U.S. support to the government to ensure?
Be delighted to. I think that obviously the United States in Nigeria is very involved in the security sector, and we've heard a lot of discussion about the nuts and bolts of a security response to keeping children safe. But we are also very active in the education. While it is a smaller line item in our overall activities at USAID, it's still $20-ish million a year. And it's been very concentrated in the North and on the idea that insecurity has hampered access of children to education. The more nightmarish and attention-grabbing problems of mass abduction at secondary schools is one thing, but we also know that there are other insecurities that provide barriers to education. The tyranny of a distance to a school or the general feeling of security within it. And I think it's important to remember in education that we're talking not only about and we had one of our early welcoming message speakers made this reference. We're not only speaking of the security of the child, we're talking about the emotional well-being of the child, we're talking about the nuts and bolts of what it is that they need to learn. And so that's what a couple of our programs in an education attempt to do. One is called Accessing Education in Northern Nigeria. And it looks to not only improve the quality of teaching and access and capacity, but integrate peace building and stability and safety into school communities in Borno and Yobe. It's a program that's been around since 2018, and it joins also a Northern Education initiative to really beef up the content of what is going into learning in local languages. We've been at this as a project since about 2015, and in these two particular programs, a bit more recently, 2018, 2017. And so we've begun to learn some lessons on these scores that we're able to, in an academic content, begin to share with other regions in Nigeria. I have to thank so much His Excellency the Governor of Sokoto, whose fantastic education commissioner has been such an advocate of moving our instructional materials and getting them on the ground. But I think what's most important and where we can unite our worlds between the idea of education and security is one of the most important components of the AENN program that I was speaking about earlier. It has a security, it worries about security dimensions like, fences around schools and physical safety of structures, not having things fall on the poor children, and their security going back and forth. But a lot of the way that they do that is having local learning facilitators who are liaisons between parents and schools and have a great deal of a relationship of trust between them and allow them to feel secure in the decisions that are made about the security elements of their children's learning environment. And that ties very firmly back to what we heard, for example, from General Uribor. Safety and security is the responsibility of everyone. It is not something that can be merely done by the security services, and indeed, no matter what sort of bells and whistles and training and equipment that a partner like the United States is able to bring to Nigeria in this endeavors, they actually do not succeed without that whole of community effort to be able to identify where threats are, where irregularities are, and helping to move together. So I hope that as we look at the content of education and how we bring children whose learning has been disrupted, how we make those children whole so they grow up to be productive citizens. I hope everyone in this room was moved by the reference to the fact that none of us would be here if we had not had our educations. It's certainly true for me, and I found that reference very touching. We want to make sure we get these children on that track going forward, and that we remember that everyone is contributing to security. Thanks.
So much important. I think that actually brought the country rep here, Naido, if you can add to the U.S. ambassador said regarding your.
Thank you very much, and I will do so with pleasure. And also I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Ministry of Finance, of course, for bringing us together, and all the excellencies here present for being so committed in the process of discussing this pertinent issue. Now, Yes, indeed, a great segue. The US is one of the major actually supporters of our work at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in support of Nigeria's efforts to enhance the security apparatus, the security environment. Now, when it comes to the particular issue of a successful counter-kidnapping strategy, I think there still remains quite a bit to be done. Recent examples seem to be underlining that need. And of course, if we look at the rise in abductions, whether it's mass abductions in schools or whether it is generally the risk of kidnapping, I think respective capacities to tackle that problem need strengthening. And there's essentially 5 key measures that we're looking at. One has already been extensively discussed, which is, of course, hardening the target, hardening through improved school safety, whether it's infrastructural measures or whether it is the issue of security training for school principals, teachers, security awareness drills for children. I think that's very important. And of course, where possible, the deployment of security agencies to actually be permanently present. But that may not be possible actually in many cases, either because of distance or also because of the reality that in many cases the organized criminal groups involved in the abductions were coming with many people, and you can't deploy dozens of police officers or other security agencies to the schools. That brings me to the second point, which is really the issue of intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing. The school safety committees that really are needed at local government level, they need to bring together the locally stationed security agencies, so not people coming from even the state center or worse so the federal government, but really people who are on the ground, locally the security agencies present. Of course, the principals of the various schools in that area, the local government chairman and other community leaders to essentially look at threats and threat scenarios, and to do that regularly so that the evolving situation is being monitored, because it's only the good intelligence that will then inform, so to speak, the response and make that response effective, in particular in terms of preventive action, which then is basically spearheaded by what I would suggest as an interagency anti-abduction rapid response squad, bringing together the various security agencies, not just police, not just civil defense, not just DSS, but collectively, and of course the military, but collectively bring them together in a squad basically type of scenario that would respond both to in a preventive fashion, if there's a threat scenario, then respond preventatively, or of course to respond to an actual incident evolving and then providing hostage negotiation capacities, electronic tracing of the offenders, but also potentially the psychological support to the victims' families. The fourth point is the collective investigative capacity of all the security agencies, police, civil defense, but also the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, I think, has an important role to play, and the Department of State Security, to identify actually the organized criminal groups that are engaged in kidnapping as a business model. We need to detect their areas of operations, their hideouts, the likely targets, and how they choose their targets, and of course how they launder the proceeds of their crime, which then leads over to the last element of the criminal justice chain, which is really the prosecution and judges, which haven't been mentioned at all so far, and which are a bit absent from that discussion. And that is unfortunate, because without the legal finish, all of our attempts will basically highly temporary, because we will arrest people and we will of course let them go eventually again, and then they will just join the very same groups or other groups in order to further essentially conduct their terrible business that has brought us here together today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you mentioned a lot of the forward, I will say, activities. It's actually the session that I would like to close on. But maybe before we go to that, I would like to also use this opportunity just to mention some of the things that at the World Bank we are also doing in terms of addressing the security situation in schools. So one of the recent operations that we have, which is adolescent girls education project focusing on secondary school, is $500 million project, and one of the key interventions is actually ensuring that girls are safe in school. And even the boys, particularly in the northern part, are also part of this intervention. But some of the activities mentioned, such as the security assessment, engagement of stakeholders like the security agencies, the parents, the teachers, the communities are also part of this particular project, and ensuring that we have proper fencing, lightening of schools, as well as making sure we have doors and windows, which is really one of the critical constraints that we have seen in some of the schools that we have in northern Nigeria. There's no proper fencing. Some of the boarding houses are even open, the roof are blown off. So there are a lot of things that this project is trying to address to ensure that at least students can be safe, and also we can ensure girls can complete secondary education. I mentioned previously that within the northern Nigeria, we do have one of the lowest secondary school completion rates. So this is just to briefly also mention about the World Bank. So this brought us to our last question. I was reminded nicely that we actually have a very limited time. So I will give each of you, starting with Honorable Minister of State, to just briefly talk about the activities that you plan to do moving forward, and also particularly the partnership and coordination role that Ministry of Education will play. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate that conference or this dialogue today set out a template for all the players in the industry to have a working space. We would want to work within that workspace. We did say that whatever funding that is made available would be a little bit more targeted this time around, because we are looking at a holistic review of everything that informs safety in school. I did say that not just one item, and I'm sure you heard the U.S. ambassador sort of repeat that the holistic engagement, and we all are products of how we socialize, and different parts of the country have been socialized differently. So responses, and therefore responses, ought to be a little bit more localized and targeted, and that is what we think. Ministry of Education, we're going to try to coordinate among the states, because the nature of education in Nigeria is that it is in the concurrent legislative field, because our constitution allows all strata of government to participate. We've tried over time, since my days from National Assembly in 1999, to use the platform of the UBEC when we first enacted it, to force everybody into some sort of level of compliance. But we found out over the past 17 odd years that not all the states can run at the same speed. Many of them have different cultural and social limitations for which they can run. But everybody ought to be released to do at the pace or engage at the pace where they are. So when we get this framework and this template, because the Ministry of Budget and planning actually is going to be doing a template for which every participant will get a role as to what to do. If you look at the entire space, it will include security operatives. It will require different models of going in. The teacher, people haven't addressed the keyest matter in any school is the teacher. The teacher quality determines whether it's a school or just a building, because most places, people think a school is a building. It has nothing to do with it. If you can get a good teacher, can teach you under a tree. Most of the professors you have in Nigeria started under a tree. But once you can get that right quality of humans, and you've seen Kaduna State government seem bullish on this. He's taking the challenge first time in his first tenure and sacked as many of them that he felt weren't really. Once you get quality teachers into your classrooms, some of the issues that begin to define why girls can't come to school, why pupils are not doing well, why the foundation for which you are going to harvest those of you who are going to be working in the minefields at later stage, if the foundation is not right, nothing can be built on that. We as lawyers, nemo don't quote habit. You can't give what you don't have. You quick plant at or solo said that you can't build on something that does not belong there. So you need to establish a foundation for wages. And that's what we think at the Ministry of Education. We need to coordinate everybody to group themselves towards. And that's where we're going to focus attention with the Ministry of Planning to see who is going to be playing what role and what relevance that does in our education outcomes.
So, Your Excellency, I think you have 1 minute. I was reminded that I have 30 seconds, but we'll give you 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much once again. As you can see, we've been led here by the chair of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Okaide Fahimi, the governor of Ekiti State, as governors of Nigeria. And we are all in our respective states committed to a safe, secure school environment. But we have a lot of challenges. And that's why I see this forum as being possibly in recent times one of the best platforms that we can use to not only come up with a framework of addressing these challenges, but also finding lasting solutions to them. And it has more to do with funding and financing. And that's why we commend the Minister of Finance. Now, Minister of Finance and the Governor of Central Bank, I appeal to you to reconsider your positions on resumption of deductions of debts, states or either the Central Bank of Nigeria or Government of Nigeria. Is key and fundamental, because by the time you begin these deductions, it means that all of our incomes and revenues are going to go down. And these challenges are still with us. They have not left us. We are supporting the police. Our revenues are not IGR is dwindling because of COVID-19 and all of this. So I appeal that on behalf of the Nigerian governors, that the Federal Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank should reconsider their position and ensure that we remain strong in funding so that we can continue to make sure that our schools are not only safe, secure, but we maintain our children in schools and their education continues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I don't know, do we have time to open it up or do we close? I'm looking for the organizer.
I'm here.
Okay.
It is doubtful, except it's absolutely urgent because we're
running.
Do we
have any urgent
dangerously out of time?
Question?
I'm looking around.
So, there's one. Maybe if you can make it brief.
Who have you got on your plate? You've got someone on your plate over there, and then we've got the representative of the Ministry of Defense behind you who might want to make a quick intervention. As soon as the moderator gives you the opportunity. So she's behind you. When she comes on the panel, she might decide to refuse to speak or defer her speech.
You can go ahead, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. My name is Group Captain SD Show. I'm a private security consultant. What I would like to add here, as we say, security is everybody's business. As parents and members of PTA, I think we should also take time to be asking in our schools. My child is in this school. What happens if there's abduction? What are the protocols that the schools have? We should be doing that. And we should take more effort to train the local communities, because definitely, no matter how you look at it, we can never have enough police or enough soldiers to place in all schools. So that community-driven security and safety of schools is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The Minister of Defense, please make it quick. I'll give you my microphone. There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm Mrs. Afolake Taiwo, representing the Ministry of Defense. I just want to emphasize on the collaboration, like the Minister of Education said. We are collaborating with them and also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, even concerning the Safe School Declaration that was signed in March 2018 and was ratified by the President in December 2019. Right now, we're training the trainers, we're training all security agencies. We actually developed a manual to train them about safe school, how to, put it into our systems, the security manuals, so that they can use this as a guide to know what they need to do. Also, because of what the Nigerian Safe School Declaration has been doing, the international conference, the 4th international conference, will be held in Nigeria between 21st and 28th of October this year, by the grace of God, where we'll share best practices concerning safe schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we actually come to an end of this, and thank you so much. I think we have very good lessons that came out of this discussion, from merging of schools to community policing to intelligence gathering to collaboration and coordination. So I think this form part of the framework that we're trying to gather from this particular event. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Ms. Aisha Garba Mohammed, Senior Education Specialist at the World Bank, who has done justice to that panel as the session chair. Her Excellency Ambassador Mary Beth Leonard, United States Ambassador to Nigeria. His Excellency Aminu Tambuwal, Executive Governor of Sokoto State. Honorable Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, Honorable Minister of State Education, and the Acting IGP Usman Alkali Baba, as well as Oliver Stoppel from the UNODC, UN Offices on Drugs and Crime. What an excellent discussion that has been, has opened the doors to more conversations and has given us an opportunity to hear where we are going with this. It's time now to invite the next panel, if we will all settle down. Very quickly, chairing this panel is Dr. Ayode Olatunbo Olakija. And we have the Honorable Minister of Finance to join this panel, Dr. Zainab S. Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, His Excellency Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Chairman, Nigeria Governors Forum. At this point, I'd like to call on Mr. Peter Hawkins, UNICEF Country Representative, Nigeria, to join. And I would also like to call on Justin Van Fleet, Executive Director, Global Business Coalition for Education, and President, Education Cannot What. And I'd like to invite the representative of the Honorable Minister of the Interior, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, who is today being represented by Dr. Ahmed Audi, Comptroller General, NSCDC. Please take your seat so that this panel can kick off. Dr. Olakija, you've got the microphone. Commandant General of the NSCDC, my apologies.
Thank you
Dr.
very
Ahmed
much.
Audi. So the microphone is now at your court. Over to you, Dr. Alakija.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the previous panel. You've laid the ground beautifully for this final session. With Without further ado, I'm going to launch into it. I'm going to ensure that we have Justin Van Fleet, who is joining us virtually.
Could we settle down, please, so we can hear Dr. Alakija? We have quite a number of people joining us
I have with
virtually.
me today the chairman of the Governors Forum, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and Planning for Nigeria. So if we could accord them the due respect, thank you very much, and begin this session. The final session of today, which we've called Panel 3, is talking about what action is needed. So we've heard the problem, we've stated the problem. We're hearing about the interventions that we've seen both at state and at federal level have been talked about. And now we're going to discuss what action is needed. We've heard some of that. We've heard talk of coordination. We've heard talk of proper communication. We want to hear what the government, what international partners, what the private sector of Nigeria, and what communities themselves can also contribute to facilitate a whole-of-society approach to creating safe learning communities. Can I have that door closed, please? I will hold the meeting until the door is shut. Thank you.
Can we get the back door shut so that way we can keep this place quite tidy? NTA, can you make your way out of that door? Thank you very much. Can we have the door shut? Thank you so much. There you go, Dr. Alakija.
Thank you very much. So, how do we facilitate this whole of society approach? What guiding principles are required to develop an Abuja Financing Safe Schools Compact? Because that really is what we've heard today. That's where the conversation has been going. The development of a compact, the development of one that involves all of us. It's been incredible to see the level of interest. I was just saying to the Honourable Minister of Finance earlier on the side that we could quite frankly have done this over an entire day, because we've had pretty much every single service chief in the country in the room. We've had ministers from all sectors. We've had governors, the head of the governor's race, and you have global appeal in this area and reputation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, you talk about the compact. I think you've got the compact here. First of all, security, our brothers over there
and sisters
who are a critical part. This is the military and the paramilitary of that equation. Finance, with the Minister of Finance. This is, without finance, there's no convening power. It brings us all together. The governors and their ability to be able to respond. And then the education fraternity, the very people who will deliver education to the children that it's so important that we think about. But it's further than that. Once you have that compact, is how education is about boy, girl, plus teacher equals learning. That's all that we're actually trying to do here. So how do we ensure the safety of the girl and the boy to be able to attend school? I think Governor El-Rufai was very eloquent about that in his analysis of where the risks are. There's secondary school, their boarding school. Why are the girls going to boarding school? They're going to boarding school because of insecurity to travel backwards and forwards to school. There are not enough secondary schools in close proximity, so the travel distance are too wide. How can we bring schools to the villages? How can we bring learning to those homes? How can we bring learning so it comes out of that child and is used by the community for good? Secondly is the community itself, understanding the importance of and the value of their children going through a school system so that they can come out having learned, being able to aspire and becoming a constructive part of our society. We know in some of these schools that have been, where children have been abducted, they come from those very communities that those girls come from. How do we turn that around so those community people value the education, value the learning, and respect the children so that they can come out of it and be able to contribute back to that community. And I think there is an issue here about how, and we talked earlier on about the media. What's the role of the media in making sure that learning is seen to be important? Teachers are seen to be respectful. I can remember the name of my teacher all these years on, and I'm sure all of us here can remember the name of our teacher. Let's start a program where we're actually respecting the teacher. They're a valuable member of that community, and what they are delivering and helping the children to do is to achieve that learning. Girl, boy, plus teacher equals learning.
Thank you, Peter. You make a really important point. You speak to both the demand and the supply side of the education piece, which we started to hear, I think, in the previous panel. I agree with you. I mean, as we speak about the safety and security of our children and of our schools, we have to absolutely focus on teachers. I know in my previous life, working on the Northeast humanitarian crisis, one of the biggest issues with getting children back into schools was the fact that there were no teachers. Nobody wanted to be there. And so that is critical. And I think also elevating the status of teachers is really important. I mean, you say you remember the name of your teacher. I married the son of mine. So, I certainly remember her name. And it's really, really important that teaching is a noble profession, and we need to put the nobility back into that, and safety and some measure of security, both financial and physical security, I think will help us to achieve that. I'm going to go to Dr. Ahmed Audi now to give us an intervention from the NSCDC side, the sort of the civil defense forces, because that's we've heard from the Chief of Defense Staff. We saw the military chiefs here today, and you are also here representing the Ministry of the Interior, which is a very important stakeholder in this. So what do you say? And over to you, sir.
Well, I'd like to first and foremost thank it immediately after my operation. Minister task bring up a robust full safety. So excited that chairman of the Governors Forum mentioned statement, talked about vulnerability study. I'd like to state here that civil defense have conducted that study, and we have some statistics that indicates very shocking revelation. Very soon, we're going to write Governors Forum so that we can interact with them, unveil our reports, thereafter roll out programs. From the statistics shown, the slide there, realize that we have over 8,000 across the 37 states, over 81,000 plus. We have also over 35,000 schools located in urban, over 47,000 located in rural areas. We also have, that is according to the survey data, we have also over 22,000 schools perimeter fencing, while over 58,000 without. The studies also reveal that we have over about 17,000 physical security, but mostly private guards. It also revealed studies we have over 62,000 that are not secured at all. Any form. You can see how vulnerable our children to anything. But the civil defense approach to this, that as it is presently in Nigeria, we amalgamate the total population of both military, police, and paramilitary, amalgamate all, I don't think we're up to 1.5 million. Asking these people, police, over between 180 to 200 million, it's not going to be easy. I think security agencies are overstretched, so we need to do something about it. Then civil defense, another aspect of civil defense approach, that we are also into intelligence. There are two distinct comparative advantages that the Nigerians don't know about civil defense. Civil defense has offices in all 774 local government. And we don't have barracks. We live, dine, and mingle with the different. So it is easy for us to get information. That is one of the comparative advantages. Second one is that civil defense is trained by virtually all security organizations. All. Talk of any security organization, approach them for training. So we combine those approaches. That is why you see us excelling. Yeah, actually.
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor.
Now one of the approaches we have adopted, that we have established what is called forward operational base, where we have deployed our special squad to respond threats, distress calls, to avert kidnappings of our school children. We have done that severally. We have attempted, we have tried to make sure that we prevent attempted kidnap. And there are other areas that we have also, like in the area of education. We educate teachers, the principals, even parents, even the students, like what the Minister for Education said, that we need to teach our children how to identify those who will come and pick them in the school.
If I may, Dr. Audi, just interrupt you, because I think this is really excellent, and I think first of all, I love the data. I'm a scientist, so I'm very data-driven, very evidence-driven, and so to hear that you have, you've done the research and that there's 62,000 schools not at all secure, I think that is very important information. So my first request will be to ask if you would please share your research with us, so that we can learn from it, and also that clearly NSCDC is a critical partner in this. I mean, the intelligence gathering that you've talked about and the early warning systems are critical. Being present, myself and the UNICEF country director spoke the other day about, we were talking through some of the things for the program, and we talked about we need to drill down to the 774 local government areas in the country, that is absolutely critical. So I want to thank you for that intervention so far, and just move on very quickly to the Honourable Minister. I mean, we're beginning to hear we've heard what the problem is. We're beginning to hear some of those who have some solutions on the ground. And as we begin to bring this ship into port today and ready to sail off another day, clearly we need strategies for financing safe schools. We need strategies for financing education. And these are a challenge. I mean, obviously national budgets are squeezed, there's COVID, but education really is the key to our recovery, be it from COVID, be it from anything, any of our development challenges. How, Honourable Minister, would you propose we go about this task before us? How would we go about pulling together this compact under your leadership, under the financing safe schools compact, basically, the Abuja Financing Safe Schools? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alakija, and let me use this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the Chairman of the Governors Forum, the service chiefs that have been there, other governors, my colleagues, ministers, and everybody that has participated. This is really a good outcome already that I've seen. So what we plan to do in the ministry was to convene this as a discourse, and I've had so many very educating approaches that we need to look at and we need to take. And I'm hoping that we will be able to develop a national plan that will have input from the community level to local government to the state. We aggregate those plans because the approaches be local. The peculiarities between our communities have to be taken into account. So when we have this plan, we'll cost it. And we will now making sure that in the national budget, at the budgets of the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, that funding is provided. And we will also be working with our colleagues in the state to make sure that similar provisions are done in also their state level budgets as their local government. We'll of course be reaching out to the private sector in Nigeria, show them the plans, and then let them select which part of the plans they will be happy to either contribute to or uptake and implement further. So if a business decides to go and build the fence in a school or equip the school with some IT device, that would be very much welcome. Well, and then also we must, of course, continue to appeal to our partners, the development partners, that already have programs that are designed to intervene in schools, and also hopefully create more programs so that the funding space is expanded, because this will clearly require a lot. 62,000 schools that are physically porous, very large number. And it's not to say that building a fence actually will stop abduction. It has to be building a fence, educating the children, educating the teachers, educating the community, putting alarm systems, just educate everybody, like the head of civil defense says, educate the community to respect and to know what the telltale signs of abductions are. So my hope is we come out with a national plan that is costed, and then we will use that plan as an instrument to mobilize resources, both nationally as well as globally. And I hear the Governors Forum, the chairman of the Governors Forum was saying that there are funds sitting in UBEC that we could look at how to change the purpose of the use or improve on the purpose of those funds so that they have funds that they can actually spend in. We will bring in UBEC into. And I know when you asked, the kickback was their laws need to be amended and so on. So whatever we need to do, we invited the National Assembly. I don't know if any member is here. If we have to amend particular provisions of some acts to enable us access funds that are available so that we can use them to invest in the security of our schools, to invest in the security of our children, which is the most important investment you can make in the development of.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. You've spoken now, I think, in your opening address, and now having heard what everybody has to say about the development of a plan, a national plan, but also the fact that it needs to come from the bottom up, not be directed from the top down. We need to work at the very lowest level of government, which is the local government area, through the states. The states need to own the plan. The states need to be fully participatory. I'm delighted today to let everybody know that all 36 commissioners and +1 commissioners of education from across the entire federation have been invited to this and are participating virtually, so that they're also a part of this discussion. It's a shame that we haven't had much, because there's various questions and comments rolling in that we will include in the report as we go forward. But that now brings me to my brother Excellency, and political engagement and political will is critical to addressing the complex situation that we have in Nigeria at the moment with regards to children, really with regards to anything. You know, we need political acknowledgement, which I'm very happy to say, I think today really shows firm political commitment, high-level political, the highest almost, I mean, barring the very president himself. Commitment, acknowledgement, and a push towards change. We need that level of political engagement. And we also recognize today that You know, we can't talk about banditry or abductions in isolation and say, oh, well, it's just happening over there. I mean, very poignantly today, I don't know how many people have noticed, have heard about it, but as we were finishing the final plenary, the president of Chad, Idris Deby, was killed and by rebels. And, you know, 4 weeks ago, people were talking about them as just rebels. You know, now they have killed a president that actually threatens to destabilize our region. It threatens to destabilize Nigeria. Chad is next door. The Northeast is now even further at risk. Governor Fayemi, Your Excellency, what do you say to this urgency of this moment, to the fact that this is beyond just securing children and schools, but that this is about securing an entire nation? Your Excellency.
Thank you, Ayode. Let me once again just thank the Honourable Minister of Finance for convening this and bringing all of us together. That's success zone. But you're absolutely right. This is not just about our children, about security of the entire nation. And what has happened a few hours ago in Chad in itself speaks to another round of regional instability. And that's something that we need to watch as a country so that we can even concentrate on dealing with this minutiae of safe schools in the country. So clearly context is important. Political will is there. I can categorically tell you that as far as my colleagues in the Governors Forum are concerned, this is a priority issue for them. Aisha spoke about what they're doing with Agile. There are other programs, BESTA. There are a number of programs that UNICEF is active on in our various states. And if it appears that some have not been as engaged as they were in the past, what is happening around us has brought these issues to the fore. As I said, over the last 3 months, I've been in Kankara, I've been in Jangebe, I've been in Kagara, I've gone around in Borno, in very many places where we're confronted with these issues. And everybody recognizes the importance of making it a priority issue. But that's at the level of political will. You can have ideas, you can have political will. If you don't have the resources to really make things happen, it's a band-aid on bullet wound. So we need to figure out the best way to address the fiscal constraints that have militated against this happening. And it's not just by saying the Honourable Minister of Finance should provide resources. It's used to me saying that and harassing her, but I would also be fair to her to say government alone can't tackle this issue. Government can do a lot, and government is doing a lot. Others are stepping to the plate. Miriam has been working with us on at-risk children program, Miriam Ways, and there's so many initiatives that are taking place. But I think one of the ways in which we must also step to the plate is at the community level. We need to do more. We need to raise the level of consciousness at the community level. We need to work with school-based management systems at the local level because they know more about the security of the environment than all of us who are from outside their setting. What we need to do is provide them with the framework, provide them with the necessary information, but we also need to bridge the gap that technology would allow us address. Yes, we don't have up to 1.5 million people in our security agencies collectively put, but we're not going to have enough people anyway. So how do we then figure out the best way to use technology to bridge the gap that we are currently experiencing in that sector? And then on the private sector, one thing that we're doing that's working for us very well in Ekiti is our Adopt a School initiative. So there is a lot of people in the private sector that can adopt schools specifically for this purpose, either as a corporate body or as individuals in the sector. They can come back. We're working with alumni bodies, old students association, encouraging them to come back, give back to their community by adopting schools in the community, in addition to a whole range of other things that we've made. But deliberate planning about partnerships must happen in order for coordination to work. And I hope that's what has started here today. That is what we must continue to do. And I can assure you, as far as governors are concerned, you have us, we will step up to the plate, and we are already doing that in our various states.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That is really wonderful to hear. The political will and commitment is there. The Honourable Minister of Finance is being told that we require financing. I have now Justin Van Fleet, who has very courageously and bravely joined us since 5 a.m. this morning, his time, in New York. Welcome, Justin. Justin is the Executive Director of Education Cannot Wait, and he is the President, no, he's the Executive Director, yes, he's the President of GBC Global. I've gotten it back to front somehow. But anyway, as we say in Nigeria, Justin, you're a real Oga at the top. You're a big boss. Education Cannot Wait and Global Business Coalition for Education. Over to you, Justin. What would you say from the global perspective of what you've heard today? What do you see is possible from an international partnership perspective? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you for including me in the conversation today. It's really inspiring to see everyone coming together for this initiative. In 2014, the Global Business Coalition for Education and their world were part of launching the original Safe Schools Initiative at the World Economic Forum. And we truly believe that the global education crisis and the issue of safe schools is a challenge that's greater than any one agency or organization, and that we all have something to contribute: the private sector, the international community, and young people themselves. And so in terms of the way forward and what we can be doing, I think, first of all, we're all here to support and come behind the national plan that the Honorable Minister is leading. And concretely, we can commit to a few things from the international community. First, in terms of Education Cannot Wait, and reiterating the commitment that UN Special Envoy Gordon Brown made earlier. I sit on the Executive Committee of Education Cannot Wait, and we are committing to bring financial resources to help support the launch and rollout of this new Safe Schools Initiative and national plan. Secondly, from the Global Business Coalition for Education, I can commit that we also want the business community to come behind the plan, and we will do everything we can to help find additional partners to help support this, whether it be technology, infrastructure, GPS, distance learning, or even philanthropy. We're committed to being a part of that initiative and helping find more partners to come in and support the government in these efforts. Third, we can concretely say that we will be helpful in innovative finance for education and for the Safe Schools Initiative, particularly with the new International Finance Facility for Education. There's some promise there, and we're happy to look into ways that we can help bring those international resources to leverage with the domestic finances being mobilized. And lastly, young people themselves. At Their World, we have a group of global youth ambassadors, and the largest cohort is in Nigeria. And these are young people in communities passionate about education, and they're ready to carry forward the banner of the Safe Schools Initiative and this national plan in the communities and help champion it at a local level. So count on us as a partner. We're ready to be here and to support this next wave of efforts to ensure a safe place to learn for every child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. That was wonderful. And I hope you're well caffeinated now before I ask you the next question, so you don't make any early morning mistakes. You've talked about the GBC side of things. I want to focus in a little bit on the private sector and that hat that you wear. Of course, you wear, as I said at the beginning, you wear two hats, the Education Cannot Wait and the GBC. We've heard how private sector is absolutely key. Every sector of society, of course, has a role to play, but for Nigeria, private sector is huge and is really key. How would GBC, from your global perspective, help to push that within Nigeria? The governor of Ekiti has just spoken about adopting schools, and I think some of that needs to be coordinated, and there also needs to be sort of almost templates in place, because I do know some groups who say they adopt a school, but they go paint walls and what have you, which is nice. But what we really need is concrete inputs, not walls being painted. Over to you, Justin. Justin? Are you muted? technology is well,
There
at
we go.
least
I think
fantastic.
I'm here now.
Okay, yeah, you're back. You're back.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic question, and I always say that it's a great thing to have acts of kindness from the private sector. You know, painting a school wall, as you say, it's a great thing and a helpful thing to do in a community. But there's so much more the private sector can bring to these efforts. And sometimes we think of it as funding, but it's also not just funding. It's the political will. It's being advocates for issues, helping to change policies by engaging with government at local and national levels. It's engaging employees. And that's the other thing we have to remember is that the private sector has so many employees, and these employees are the actual community members. So the more that we can get employees themselves involved in supporting safe schools, and also looking at the goods, the talents, the resources, the services that are provided by companies. How can we tap into using their distribution systems and their expertise to really deliver at scale with this initiative? So I think there's so many opportunities. And what we did when COVID sort of broke out over a year ago, we reached out to our network, and we had over 100 companies provide low-cost or free distance learning and technology available to schools across the world. And I think that's an example of the goodwill that the private sector can bring, and that we can channel that in a much more strategic way and help coordinate so that we're making an impact that's much greater than the efforts of any one individual, and much greater than the acts of kindness, but actually really creating systemic change and true engagement with the private sector.
Thank you, Justin. I often like to say that we like, charity is lovely, but we want partnerships, not charity. And I think that would be, so for me, as sort of a key phrase to the business community, that don't see this as charity, but see it as partnership, because an educated young populace is your workforce for the future. Thank you, Justin. So we're talking now about the Abuja Financing Safe Schools Compact, which marks a commitment of government, multilateral stakeholders, state, the community to work together to develop, plan and implement a strategy for financing safe schools and creating safe learning communities for children across Nigeria. What I've heard today tells me that this compact is being proposed to include the following elements, and I'm looking directly at the minister as I say this, as she's going to come in next. We have a commitment to develop a participatory roadmap for the design and implementation of a strategy to finance safe schools to create safe learning environments. I'm hearing that we have collaborative and participatory planning exercises planned to consult at local government level with community to develop plans and implement strategies for safe learning at all 774 local government authorities, with the involvement and help, I hope, of the NSC, as we've just heard. I've heard that we need oversight, governance and strategic direction from regional and national level, with insights and experience from local, subnational and national government, along with multilateral stakeholder insight. We still have our ambassadors here, USA, UK. Earlier we had the ambassador of Egypt, who was in the room, I believe had to leave because of the recent activity in the region. We've heard a need for commitment of finances and resources to enable the development of this roadmap at all levels, along with private sector and multilaterals. We've heard the need for a public-private partnership and development of other modalities, including technology, being employed to deliver the objectives and needs of this FSS initiative. And we've got a commitment, I would like to propose, to deliver this in the next 3 months and review it by the end of the year. Honourable Minister, what say you?
Well, Dr. Alakija, you've said it all, but truly what we had hoped to achieve is a commitment by everyone to work with us in developing this national plan. And I did gather a lot from UNICEF, country rep that spoke about 5 principles that the plan must undertake. So we'll go by those 5 guiding principles. Then we'll define the scope, because this is all about upscaling the safe school initiative. It exists. It's not a new one, but we have to upscale it. It has to be implemented at every level of the society. We have to use the whole of government approach, a whole of community. Everybody needs to be involved in the private sector and the security services. Because at the end of the day, the implementation of the security will be done by you. So you need to guide us as to what we should put in place in terms of security for schools, and also how best to educate the children, the teachers, and the community to identify security risks. So for me, this is an input gathering session. And I do agree we can do this within 3 months, that we, at the end of that 3 months, we have a draft national plan that we can expose again to stakeholders and get their input. And then we'll have a financing roadmap that will come along with that plan, a financing plan that will come along with that.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Your Excellency, the Governor, because we're talking money, we're talking planning, we're talking states, we need to get your yay on this at state level, because devolving planning as well to state level, ensuring that states will own the plan, otherwise it's not implemented.
Well, I think education of our kids is really number one priority for governors, and even in places where it wasn't as top of line priority in the past, it is now. Everybody has stepped up to the plate. We are all committed to this, and we are also committed to ensuring that a significant portion of our budget, ranging from 15 to 20%, is going to this sector in many states. So really, I think you're preaching to the converted. As governors, we're already on this page.
Fantastic. So we have commitment from the federal level, we have commitment from the state level. We heard commitment earlier from the Commandant NSCDC, and we also heard from Justin, but also now let's hear from you, Peter, at the local level. Our multilateral partners committed to this process?
Absolutely, and if I may quote someone earlier on, can you have a safe schools when you don't have a safe country? I don't know. But you certainly, if you don't have safe schools, you certainly will not have a safe country, and you certainly won't have a safe state, because the people that you're bringing through are those who are traumatized, who are not learning, who are seeing the wrong side of society. So from our perspective, looking at the different levels, as the Honourable Minister said, intelligence and analysis, fundamental part of that doesn't cost, just requires commitment. To then look at technology to see how you can do early warning and respond to the situation, but also looking at different ways of averting the insecurity. Njebe serves 2 LGAs. Those girls had to travel. That's why they were in that school. Let's look at different ways of ensuring that education reaches out to the communities, become safer. We've also talked a lot about school-based management. Very, very powerful tool that Nigeria started. It started in Nigeria. It's a very powerful tool that allows the Minister of Finance, the governors, to invest in the school, who can then invest in the community and bring those communities together. The child, the girl and the boy, with the teacher and the communities, benefits of learning, what it brings back to them. All of those, the international community will certainly want to will certainly want to commit to ensure that safe school equals a prosperous and secure Nigeria.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to give 30 seconds to the NSCDC to get a commitment from the security forces as we bring this session to a close, and then invite up the chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, to, as he represents Nigerian private sector, to join us as we would normally have a group hug and shake hands to say we have a compact, but unfortunately we have COVID, so we'll just have a group photograph instead. Commandant General, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Matter of fact, Honorable Minister, Hero, Excellency Haji Raouf Adegbeshola, directed National Security and Civil Defense Corps should be in safe schooling. By doing so, when we looked at our analysis of the survey that we conducted, we realized that most schools use private guards. They are frontliners in providing physical security. Coincidentally, civil defense is saddled with the of registering, supervising, monitoring, and even training of the private guards. I think we're going to leverage on that. We use them to get information for us, and we'll try to make sure that ours. I'd like to also say that we are going to compile what's that those data, take it to the Honorable Minister, very sure that he direct that, make that available.
Thank you very much. We have a commitment, and I believe, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a financing safe schools, Abuja Financing Safe Schools Compact. We have agreement from all parties. I would like to, before we head into the closing session, I would like to say thank you to everybody who was here. Thank you very much, Justin, for being with us all the way from New York. Thank you for this incredible discussion that we've had. We're going to invite private sector, the person of the chairman of the NESG group, Mr. Aswe Igodalo, to join us in a symbolic compact as we stand here and take a photograph together. And from me, that's it, over and out. Thank you very much.
Very well done, Dr. Alakija, and everybody who has participated in the panel, led by the chief host herself, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Chairman, Governors Forum, the Commandant General of the NSCDC, the Country Director of UNICEF, and of course, Mr. Aswe Igodalo, who has joined them in a symbolic photograph to show that private sector is on board. And as is expected, Dr. Alakija is an excellent moderator. We want to thank you all for making the important contributions, and we would like particularly to thank Mr. Van Fleet, who has joined us from New York. Thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you join us. It's great to see you, and your contributions were very well received, has been very ennobling and inspiring, and we thank you for all the suggestions that you have made and your commitment. We appreciate you. Thank you so very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. It's great that we have rolled the panels to an end. And these panels that have come close to the end of the panel number 3 and the session. As we prepare to take the closing remarks, I would like to remind you of some of the conversations today. One of it is psychological support for those who may have gone through the trauma. We must also remember that there was a conversation made about International Agency Rapid Response Team. And we must remember that our value has always been about hard work, and the role of the media is critical as well as private sector. At this time, I would like to invite to the podium the Permanent Secretary, Special Duties, Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mr. Shehu Aliyu Shinkafi, to deliver closing remarks for what I will consider an excellent afternoon. Thank you very much indeed. I shall be announcing those taking the press conference in a short while, but first we'll hear from Mr. Shinkafi in his closing remarks. Please let's pay attention and settle down for a little bit. This is the last part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Junior. Let me, like all other speakers before me, stand on already established protocols. You can say that the day has been well spent.
Let's pay the Permanent Secretary some attention. He's on his feet. Permanent Secretary, please go ahead.
Mine is simple. It's just to say thank you to all those that have honored this invitation to be here this afternoon. So on behalf of the conveners of this dialogue, namely the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the Nigerian Governors Forum, the Nigerian Economic Forum, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and the Emergency Coordination Center, I wish to express our sincere appreciation to all those who contributed in one way or the other to make this worthy event a huge success. From the organizers to the planners, to the panelists and the media, we owe you a very huge debt of gratitude, and our special thanks go to members of the National Assembly, state governors and the Governors Forum, National Economic Council, the Federal Ministry of Education, Office of the National Security Advisor, the Chief of Defense Staff, Service Chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, and the Commandant, Nigerian Civil Defense Corps. We acknowledge the support of the diplomatic representations in Nigeria, multilateral institutions, donors, civil society groups, and the private sector. We thank you all and wish you safe journey back to your respective destinations. Thank you all and God bless.
I'd like to quickly invite those going for the press conference, the Honorable Minister, after the national anthem. Please remember that we'll take the national anthem before we leave the room in a few minutes. Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, for your closing remarks. We appreciate that. Mr. Aswe Godalo, if he's still in the room, there's a press conference just outside the door. Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Chairman, Nigeria Governors Forum, and also Dr. Zainab S. Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The rest of us will go to lunch. VIP is upstairs, and there is tea out this way for the rest of us. Media, can we have the national anthem? Let's bring this event to a proper close.